Okay, now after all that, we're jamming. It's
Yeah, baby.
it's really happening. Can you believe it? We're here,
I'm excited.
man. Okay, well, first of all, here's what I got. I was going to tell you. I got Boneyard. Keep
Boneyard.
it
Oh,
cold, drink fresh. Built in Bend, Oregon.
nice.
This is that. It's that good stuff. This is that Oregon. If there's any place that understands Oregon's brewing scene, it's like Littleton, Colorado. Like it's Colorado in general, right?
Yeah, we have a. I think I can walk to, and I'm out in the suburbs, but I can walk to a couple of brew pubs.
Oh, nice. Hold on a sec. I think I lost your sound now. Oh man, no way.
No, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, cool.
Can you hear me?
You cut off a little bit there. I don't know if it's your internet, but you said you could walk to what?
Couple of brew pubs, couple of breweries,
Oh, gotta love that. See, same.
and
It's
I'm
just amazing down here. Okay, I got a
yeah.
question for you. We'll just start lighthearted, little toss up, softball
Okay,
question here. Was it a cult that we were in? Were we in a cult, Will?
absolutely, no question. I think the definition of a cold involves the lingo, and we have way too many phrases and words that other people don't understand. So
Yeah. HQ, DSM, Blue
work.
Light Award, week.
My ATM is still Mort.
Yeah. Yes. That's awesome. All right, well, let me tell people who we're talking to here. By the way, shout out to NLA Energy for bringing out this episode. If you guys are looking for a new place to work, man, that solar company's kicking ass. All right, we have Will Arthur here with us today, who sold 10 summers with the OG winning tradition from 1993 to 2002. He went to Wheaton College, originally from Newton, Kansas, and he went into the insurance business after he left Southwestern. We'll hear all about that here in a second. His favorite scroll is number 3. I will persist until I succeed in the Orient. Young bulls are prided in the arena. It's that I got it memorized. Is how many times?
Yeah, yeah. There's this guy Chris Gardner from Nashville. He could quote that whole scroll, the
No,
whole thing. I
he's a
remember
book
him
guy.
doing it at a family heritage train mower one time. I was just laughing my butt off.
No way.
Yeah,
I suppose we could do it, and since A, we've read it so many times, and B, we memorized sales talks.
right.
Yeah, dude.
Exactly.
What a weird time. All right. Well, so first of all, let's just take it from the top. We usually love to ask about what you've been up to since you left Southwestern. So 2002. Um,
Yeah.
man, selling books. I think in the 2000s was probably just the best experience out of all of the decades that you could have sold. So just 90s and 2000s. Before the internet, but enough that people still needed education help, more like not using online resources, not without Facebook. So tell me about it. What happened since you left? How did you end up here? And then we'll just poke around some things you say.
Sure. So 2002. I will say this, interestingly enough. So I spent 3 years as a DSM, my eighth, ninth, and 10th summers, and I was really, really burnt out because I was never the DSM that got to be off the book field. I was always out there selling with my crew those 3 summers as a DSM. So it's like you bust tail all year, recruiting, trying to get student managers back. Had to recruit my own personal team because I got a very small base when I started as a DSM. And then I go sell all summer. Then I go and check everybody out and check how it seemed to go on forever. And so I think I was single and whatnot. I think I went out on like 1 or maybe 2 dates in like 3 years. I mean, it was just kind of crazy. Just nothing but work, 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 work. So when I left, I was probably not. I probably should have taken 3 or 6 months off, but I really wasn't in a position to do that. So I went to work with a company called Athlon Sports. I don't know if you've actually talked to anybody that actually worked for them.
No,
Um,
maybe
but
I don't
it's
think
a
so.
Spencer Hayes owned company, and the last time I knew, their offices were actually in Landers Plaza. Um,
Avalon
they do
Sports.
so they do the preseason magazines, like an annual. comes out once a year. It would come out in June for football. It would come out in like probably September for basketball, pro and college, and then you'd have like probably January, February, you'd have like golf and NASCAR and baseball would come out. And we did these marketing programs that we would sell to companies, and spent 2003 to 2000, beginning of 2006 with them, and worked with a guy named Ryan Rutherford, who he was my manager at Athlon, but I had field managed with him at Purdue University my first year out of Wheaton, and so I knew Ryan pretty well, and spent about 9 months selling medical equipment in 2006 with a guy named John Loughran, which I don't know if you know John, but he was the OG Blitz guy. So Eagle Blitz, he was Blitz. So back when I sold, they were actually separate deals. There was Eagle, that was Tom Boyd and his crew, and that was, I think Rao was part of Eagle, and then Locker Room was Blitz, and there's a guy named Brian Ross that came after John, and then he's actually been at Family Heritage for like the last forever after he left the book business. Brian Harbin was in Blitz, so he would have worked with Ross.
I love Brian.
I remember I watched that episode that you did.
He's great.
Yeah, love that kid. I guess I still love him. I haven't talked to him in several years though. And then in 2006, I went to work with Family Heritage. I kind of realized that a little short sales cycle was more my style, and you go out and knock on doors selling.
Really, really close to selling books, and I was always pretty good at selling books. So went to work with Family Heritage, and I was there until 2021. And through a bunch of conversations, decided to go be a broker, and worked with Family First Life. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. There's a bunch of book guys over there that I work with real closely. I still have my life insurance contracts with them. But then I've also I dabble in some supplemental, and we have a preventative care online platform, kind of a wellness program that we sell as well. And my closest business partner is a guy named John Fierro, and John was with Family Heritage, and he was actually the number 2 rookie the year that Dustin Hillis was number 1 rookie, which was my last summer, 2002.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at now. The one interesting thing I will say in Family Heritage, I recruited and had a team at different points for different periods. Because I recruited, I don't know, not as many as some people did, but I definitely recruited a ton of people to Southwestern. But where we're at now, I only would be looking for somebody who was like a pretty experienced salesperson to come work with us now, because what we do is a little bit different than even Family Heritage would be, or your senior benefits. I mean, it's one of those things. I do final expense life insurance for sure, but we've just got a lot of irons in the fire, and a lot of different. There's a lot of product knowledge you got to have in order to sell what we sell. And so I'm really looking for someone I could just teach product knowledge to, and that I wouldn't have to teach them how to sell, wouldn't have to teach them how to motivate themselves, those kind of things. Really looking, if I'm looking for somebody, which I'm not really looking that hard, honestly.
So, okay, as usual, so many questions. Okay.
That's your phrase. I love it. So many questions.
You pointed that out to me, and I was like, that's right. I do say that a lot. Okay. So I guess first of all, why? I mean, it makes sense the departure from Southwestern, but how much did you shop around before you decided to land at insurance?
Hold on 1 second. I was just adjusting the volume. Before going to insurance, because that was like 4 years later.
Yeah, like you shopped around. Was it just at the magazine place, or did you like what drew you to the insurance specifically? Because insurance is a complex, highly rated turnover industry. So like it's always interesting to me when I meet someone who just jumps into insurance out of nowhere, or it seems like out of nowhere, and then they stay for 20 years. Like that's or several decades.
Well, Family Heritage is the unusual situation in that there were so many old book people in there, and there was a gentleman named Peter Foray,
Yeah.
and he would be another one you ought to get on this podcast.
Listen, Peter.
He actually
If you're
lives in Oregon.
if you're listening, Peter, we have been told by so many people on and off the air that we need to get Peter Foray. Like Dana Potum.
Well,
I
he
think,
lives
is
right
another
there
one.
in Oregon.
I know. I need to find him. Peter, where is he in Portland too?
No, he lives in Eastern Oregon, out on a ranch, out in the country.
The tough life out there in that East.
Yeah, well, he made a ton of money in Family Heritage, and he still got residual money coming in. He built a huge, just a monstrous team. But he had talked to me about coming to Family Heritage right after I left the book business. But
oh, I see.
I was a little bit jaded, I guess would be the best word, when I left the book business. I was not.
Say more, Will. Say more.
Oh, well, that's kind of a long and sordid tale full of ups and downs. No, I'm kidding. No, it all goes back to your guys that you know already, Jake Chesney and Pat Roach and some of these guys, and Craig Soder. So, my father actually passed away at the end of my second summer selling books in 1994. So, many years ago. But Craig Soder and Dan Moore and Jerry Heffel, all those guys kind of became father figures to me. And there was a huge amount of loyalty, even though if you look back on some of the different things that happened, some people would have left and been mad earlier on. But I was very, 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 I think I'm stubborn, loyal, whatever you want to call it. That's why I stick around in businesses for so long. But what ended up happening when he made me a DSM, he had, quote unquote, Soder had taken a number of people away from me, like big dogs who were doing really well and recruiting big teams. Jake Chesney, for example, was one. And it was kind of, they kept getting moved off of my base, quote unquote. And I didn't understand exactly how it worked. All I knew is I was no longer getting paid on all of Jake and all of Jake's people. And it was like, where did that come from? But he had moved me into an associate sales manager role and raised my percentage on what I did have, these kind of things. And looking back on it, I was not as, I didn't have the people skills that some of these other guys had. Although I chalked it up to the fact that they were married and he didn't want them to leave. So he gave them the DSM job so that they could stay home in the summer and wouldn't have to travel maybe as much. But because Jake had gotten married and Pat had gotten married and they all got promoted a year, 2 years, 3 years before I did to the DSM, I spent 4 or 5 years as a field manager, full-time recruiting on campuses before I got to be the district sales manager. So it was summers 4, 5, 6, and 7. It was after my 7th summer that they brought me in as a sales manager. And then they also, once again, took away more of my quote unquote people and put them under somebody else. And that
would piss me off too. Now, oh man. Okay.
But
see
what I got, well, here's the thing. Another person, Alicia Huck. So after I had moved out to Denver, I remember sitting down with her. Well, sitting down, we were hanging out at her house watching football, I think on a Sunday afternoon. And I was whining and complaining about the book business. And she's like, you got to let that stuff go because it's hurting you more than it's hurting them. Bitterness is bad, that kind of thing. And I didn't necessarily take it right to heart right that minute. It took me a little while to work through it. But years later, looking back on it, the reality is I look back on some of like the stupid stuff that I did, stupid things that I said, and I'm just like, I can't believe that I was such an idiot with people and saying things that hurt people's feelings, just different things in different situations. And I probably wasn't as much ready to be there as I could have been. And the other thing I will say is this: there's kind of three things that people can learn in the book business. So you learn to sell books, you learn to train people to sell books, and you learn to recruit. So those are kind of your three. The fourth one you have to learn to be a great DSM is you got to learn to get those student managers to come back and get a lot of them to come back, because they always double their production from their first summer to their second summer. That's like statistically the way it always, at least it's the way it was back in the day. Really? And I did not, over those 3 years, really learn how to get as many of the student managers back as I could have or should have,
Right. But I mean, here's the deal. I commend you for taking ownership in your part in what happened, I guess. But it's still like, and also not to, if Pat and Jake and all those guys, that's how Southwestern was trying to get him to stay. If that's what happened, then it's not their fault. It's definitely the corporate. I mean, I think
and it was all Soder, actually, honestly, from my perspective, because he's the one that was bringing him in.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a fair reason to leave, and it's fair to leave frustrated. Now, Alicia's advice is sound, which is pretty much the gold standard. If she talks, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna listen, because she says smart things a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
It's actually frustrating how often she says like smart things, and it's like, can I say some smart things sometimes? So it's also honorable that you're still taking ownership for that. But my point is more like, that's not uncommon to hear about Southwestern's corporate structure, at least in the 90s and 2000s, and for sure at least up until I left. I don't know how it's changed the last 7 years, which a lot of things have changed. Leadership's changed. Dustin Hill has left, Dan Moore's gone, so
sure,
DSM's up. So can't speak for it right now. But what I can say is, from stories like this and talking to you and talking to people like this, where it's like there are situations you hear where somebody got a little bit shafted, for the sake of a better, for lack of a better word, and it sucks to hear. It sucks to hear about it, because it hurts. The part that's hard is not the business side, because you're like, screw it, it's business, money's money, I'll go find somewhere else. Plus, sounds like you did great after you moved on. It just hurts more from a personal level, because you've built kind of like these really strong connections with people who are kind of family now, because you see them more than family anyway.
Yeah,
you're
for sure
with them, and so if someone does that, it's like it just hurts internally a little bit more.
Well, and one thing I also have to say is that Craig Soder never asked to be my dad, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and that's a lot on him too, to be like all of a sudden feeling like there's a lot of pressure to like take someone. It's a messy situation, and if anything, it teaches you business can get messy, right? Business can be tough.
There is no doubt about it. And that whole management thing and people being on somebody's team and not on somebody else's team, I mean, that's followed all the way through. I mean, that was big time in family heritage as well. So
yeah,
you get used to it.
Yeah, it's hard, man. That's tough, but I get it. I get it from all sides, to be honest with you. I understand.
Sure.
I understand the situation Craig was in. I understand the situation, Pat and the other guys were in. I understand the situation you were in. That's tough. I don't think there was a clean way to do that.
Well, the other side of it is there was 10 years there. So it's that the way it was at the very end, whatever, there was a lot of other stuff. And there's a little note here that he wrote me on this folder I was telling you about. He sent me all these weekly reports, and it was like, hey, Will, thanks for all the years working with me. Craig, it's just like, and it's just classic Soder to send a note and handwrite something on it, and it's, yeah, I mean, I learned so much from that guy. I mean, and it's funny looking back on it. There's so many more things that I didn't realize, but it all kind of soaked in just from osmosis, being around him over the years,
Yeah, and by all accounts, like one of the best leaders Southwestern's had overall.
For sure.
in the
For
history of
sure.
the company. So damn, toast to Craig.
Oh, absolutely. For sure.
You know, I haven't had a guest and drink with me on the air in a while.
Oh, goodness. I was looking forward to it. Hold on. I got to get another beer out of my beer fridge right here.
Yes, we gotta. Let's keep, as they say in Southwestern, let's keep the main thing the main thing.
Well, it's funny you say that because we were talking about their Southwesternisms. There was a million Soderisms.
Oh,
And I remember at his funeral, we were throwing out all the Soderisms. And the first one that comes to mind is he always said, or he'd come in and he'd kind of chuckle and laugh, and he'd be like, "When I was in high school, I played football. Now I look like a football."
That was your favorite?
No, that's like the first one that almost everybody would throw out there.
What was your favorite?
My favorite one, he'd always say this kind of as he was kind of like leaving. He'd be like, "I got to go catch a plane. I've got a special deal with the airlines. If I show up late, they leave without me."
I never knew Craig well enough to know these things, man. I wish I would have. It sounds.
He had just a ton of. We called them Soderisms, just like phrases, and we'd sit there and drink beer and throw them out there.
Do you think he came up with them, or he just collected them over the years and just kept his favorite?
I would say he collected them. It was just, because he met so many, many, many people, and he was just the king of developing rapport and making people laugh and making them kind of chuckle. And it was just all these little pithy sayings that he had. But he had other ones that had more to do with the books business. I remember him always talking the very worst possible thing in the world on the book field is to run out of territory or run out of your school district on a Thursday afternoon when you've got, you don't have anything to do on Friday and you got to go start a new territory and not planning your situation out very well, that kind of thing.
Dang. Isn't that true? It's interesting the little things that you learn strategy wise when you're doing this job that then apply later on. When you start like,
oh yeah.
I mean, literally that's kind of what the whole podcast is about and over the course of the 3 years we've been running. But it still amazes me as to how like for example, my wife and I are just starting it's a new year, so we're like doing this. We're taking kind of it's not just one day that we're doing this over, but we're just trying to plan our year. And she didn't sell books, right? But I did, and so it's like we're trying to set some goals, big goals, crystallize them, just in the littlest ways. And she's like, "Oh, this is really smart," to blah blah. And I'm like, I know, but I learned this when I was 18. Like, I don't know what the hell's happening. So crazy. I'm still using this. I still think of like, it's just really weird how it just 3 months. Well, really, we did 3 months over several years, but like, how that little bit of time just changes your entire perspective on how you look at life and approach your life. It's just really fascinating how that can.
Well, yeah. So Soder had a first year meeting that was like the things you learn are not the things you expect to learn. And number one on that list was goal setting.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what I learned that I didn't expect to learn? I think we haven't talked about this in a while on the show, but being a father. I mean,
you got to observe a lot of them. Yeah.
But I mean, do you have kids, right?
Yeah, I have 3 stepkids.
Okay. Did like the book fuel ever teach you about that? Like, you remember, like, for example, there would be parents and I'd meet a dad and I'd be like, no way am I telling my kid this. You'd be sitting down with a family, the kid's really interested in the books, and the dad's like, you suck at math.
You would never use these.
Why would you ever be good at math, even with these? And you're watching this, and you're like, you're saying this to your kid in front of a stranger. What do you say to him in private? Holy shit. And then the other way, you're like, you have parents that are like, you know what, Andres, I understand my kids might not use this, but just the fact that they can see that we're valuing their education, that's all that matters to me. And you're like, dude, wow, amazing. Like, and he's a good husband. He's like honoring his wife in front of you, and he's like, just kind and open. And you're thinking to yourself, like, I'm gonna be this dad. I'm gonna be this dad when I have kids. Like, did you ever pick something like that up?
Oh yeah, for sure.
It,
All of the above. I mean, I'm trying to think of other things that I could say. I guess it just gives you faith in the American people
yeah,
from spending all those summers, all those different places. It's like if they're a parent, their life revolves around their kids. I mean, that's 95% of American parents. That's all they care about. That's what they spend their time doing is, going to all their activities and helping them with their homework and dealing with school and helping them with this. And yeah, they're
yeah,
not, there's not as many like parents out there that aren't paying attention as you might think, especially if you watch the news or whatever.
yeah. And it fractures you a little bit, your soul, when you meet a parent that isn't paying attention. Um, Also, I think that's what makes this. I think wow, this is cool. We went down a rabbit hole, but this is kind of cool. This thought, I've always tried to figure out like what made our job or even this podcast. Because let me give you the 30,000 foot view of this thought I just had. Sorry to derail your entire life story,
Sure.
but like. Okay, so this podcast, sometimes people are like, what if you started having people on here who went door to door but didn't sell books? Maybe they sold vacuums or knives. And in my head, I always
Oh,
said, no, I just don't think it's the same thing. And I never could like explain why people are like, why not? It's door to door. I'm like, it's still not the same. And I think that what we're talking about here is probably the biggest difference in selling because what we were selling involved emotional, uh, I don't want to say what's the word I'm looking for, emotional selling. When you're buying a
yeah,
vacuum or when you're buying knives, I guess that could be emotional. Maybe your dad was a cook, or your mom like
maybe.
really had really cool knives, and then you lost them. I don't know. It could be that, but generally
I,
speaking, it's
I
not an
sold
emotional
Cutco
sale.
too.
Yeah. Okay. So there you go. So it's not the same. But when you're talking to families, one
Yeah,
the
it's a
sale
different thing.
yeah, the sales talk included you bringing in the whole family. Like if the grandma was there, bring her in too. Like it's
Yep.
kids, mom, dad, everybody. And then the next thing is you're appealing to the hope of an improvement in your kids' education,
Yep.
which is a different sale. It's different than any other door to door thing that pest control, solar, it doesn't really hit the same note when it comes to the families that you meet. And so this experience of like we're going to sit down and I'm going to learn how to talk to a kid varying in age from 0 to 18 and I got to connect with this kid. I got to connect with the dad. I got to connect with the mom. I got to get them to talk about the things that they're uncomfortable about. Some of this could get vulnerable. I mean, the kid could be getting bullied at school. The kid could be insecure about their grades, or on the other hand, maybe they are secure about their grades. Such a mixed bag, and you got to learn to
Sure.
tap into all of that. And so that's I think what makes our experience of specifically of selling educational books to kids and families different, and I've never really understood that until now. Actually, you've made me realize this. So this is
Well,
cool.
what's interesting then is for some people it's an easy transition because of that emotion, but for some people it's not because it's kind of a downer. But going into family heritage and selling cancer insurance was a very emotional thing to talk about.
Yeah,
But it's more of a downer thing though, as
yeah,
opposed to let's get all hyped and be excited and do executive exercises.
yeah.
Um, but
Because
it's
you're
also very emotional though at
gonna
the same
die.
time. Yeah, right. Exactly.
You're. I mean, yeah. Wow, that's really interesting. I think that's what makes our experience so different. It's just that we were able to have a different level of connection with the people that we were talking to, which is what made the experience.
Sure.
Back to the original point. You're gonna learn things you didn't expect to learn.
Right. Exactly.
Damn, that was cool. Great episode.
Little
Thanks, Will, for being here. We'll see you guys all.
little
Have a good.
heavy on a Friday afternoon, huh?
Hey, we're drinking. We're just talking. Just talking. Okay, so so you're talking about what you're. Let's fast forward to what you're up to now, because we can go down a whole rabbit hole of family heritage. I've heard all the good and bad of family heritage as well in here, as you can imagine. But why did you earlier before we started recording, you're talking about being a broker. Can you explain, like, to people who might not understand the insurance business, why that's such a big deal? I mean, I've talked to the folks over at Cardinal enough to like get the gist and really get it, but maybe some of those people haven't heard those episodes. So from your words, what's kind of like the big deal about this? So what? You're a broker. What does that mean?
Well, yeah, it's like I'm not a broker on Wall Street. It's not like that for sure. I don't have some kind of a Series 6, Series 7 license, all that kind of stuff. I'm just an insurance. I'll joke when I go into a business if I'm cold calling. I'm just a lowly insurance broker, just a lowly insurance guy. But the big deal is that you have lots of different companies and lots of different products that you can offer to different people in different situations. So if they say one thing, I might have another angle that we can possibly work together on. But then the other side of it is I've got a very, very deep amount of different things that I can do for the same person, which goes back to what every book person wants to do once they're done with the book field is stop cold calling, stop knocking on the door when they're selling, is they want to get into a warm market. Well, this is my way of getting into warm markets is I've got a lot of products. So I've also got tons and tons and tons of clients that I can go to and upsell them on other things. So I've got companies I do benefits for. Well, each of those people that works for those companies, I can go in and call them personally and try to sell them life insurance if I want to.
I see.
Depending on their situation. And I have done that, but up to now with that way, because it's only been, 2-3 years that I've been a broker. I haven't done as much of that as I probably will down the road.
That's cool. So, but you just switched. So 2 years ago, you switched, and was it was like mid-COVID, right, when you made the switch?
No, it was April, May, June. I want to say it was May, June of 2021.
Oh, okay. So
because I remember going out and selling family heritage out in the country in Nebraska and Wyoming where they didn't really care about COVID. During 2020, I stayed home for probably 2 months and lived on my residuals, that kind of thing. And then I went back out.
You went door to door in Nebraska, like in the Panhandle, the Colorado side?
I will say that probably my last 6 to 7 years at Family Heritage, I was mostly business to business. So I wasn't doing door to door anymore. But I was going out and, Scottsbluff, Wyoming, Northwest Kansas, Eastern Colorado, out in the country, which I know you're going to ask me what was my favorite territory. My favorite territory was out in the country selling books.
Right.
So,
it's by far the best. Anybody that says anything other than that was just crazy.
You are correct. Correct. So that's I still go out in the country a lot now, but now it's all businesses. But what I end up working with is not every small town, but almost every small town out there has a school, they have a hospital, they got a county and a city, and I can call on all of those companies. And then there's HVAC companies and electricians and farm ag companies out there that I can call on too.
How's the approach different for a business than like what we're used to?
Well, it's not that much different except for other than I kind of wander in and they'll a lot of times say, "Can I help you?" Well, my name's Will, and you try to break the ice before you actually tell them what you're doing. So I'll kind of walk in and so you notice, Nebraska, you notice the Nebraska flag or the Nebraska sign. Husker fans. Can't get away from them out here, And then they start to chuckle, and you try to throw something out there before you actually, and half the time I can sometimes talk to somebody for 3 or 4 or 5 minutes if they're friendly and open before I even tell them, "Oh, well, why are you here, by the way?" And then it's like, "Oh, well, I'm just a lowly insurance broker and I talk to folks about benefits, that kind of thing."
Dang, you got this down to a science. You're good. Of course you're good. You were a DSM and then you did insurance for, 10 plus years afterwards. So you're crushing the game, man. That's awesome. Nebraska. Can't get away from him. No, we can't. I still find him here in Portland. Oh, man. Oh, are you still with me? Oh, I think we lost you. Oh, boy. Let's pause really quick.
So does that answer your question on the broker business at all,
Yeah,
or a little bit,
I
or?
yeah, I think so. The way I've always heard it described is kind of like when you go to Google Flights and you like type in like, Portland to Denver, and then it gives you like Delta has this price, American Airlines has this price. And so
Yeah,
you're kind of the Google Flights of insurance. You're like, you know, I got based on your situation, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, client, here's the insurance I'd recommend to you, or here's the plans I'd
right.
recommend to you. So that makes sense.
And then when I work with businesses now, oh, when I work with businesses now, I come in with a package. And then when I sit down with each individual employee, then I've got some options for them as well.
Dang. So do you get paid off of the business and then the employee individually too? Because
No,
the
I get
insurance
paid off the
counts.
employee only. The employee
Ah,
only.
but then
But
that gives you
it's the biz.
access.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to something you learned in selling books was building trust. So on the book field, we would build trust, building rapport, and then we would use names, right? And that would help you
Right.
build trust. Well, what works even better than using names with insurance is sitting there where they work to sell to them or to have ways to get them to get insurance. Is if you're sitting there in their place of employment, that builds a lot of trust.
Yep. And
So
who was saying this? Was it Josh Ignis? Josh Ignis used to sell when he was selling books door to door. I think this was like this episode hasn't been published yet, but by the time this one is, yours will also be. So, but he was saying that people when you go to business, he was selling books business to business. But what's like
wow,
to like self-employed people, so like people would be like, oh, they're not home because they own the chiropractic shop. He was selling in small towns, and so like when he was getting pre-approached, people would be like, well, they're not home. They're like the local chiropractors, so they're not gonna get home until 5. And he's like, which chiropractor office? And they'd be like, whatever, Move Better. And so then he'd just go to Move Better, and he'd be like, hey, are you John? Yeah, okay. Hey, I was at your house. Your neighbors told me I should come talk to you. And what he found, and based on what you're saying, is people. It's a great place to go visit and try to sell to people because people want to avoid doing work as much as possible. So they will more likely tell you, "Yeah, I got 20 minutes," to avoid doing whatever they're doing, and sit down with you and talk. So the sit downs are so easy.
honestly, what I will say, I think it's an individual thing. I think some people would prefer to be in a selling situation at work, and some would prefer to be at home. Because I've had people at businesses tell me, "You're going to have to go talk to the wife, but she doesn't get home till 5," or "I'd rather
Oh
talk to you
yeah.
tonight," or "Can you come see me on Saturday?" Just stuff like that. But and sometimes they're just blowing you off, I guess, as well. But um,
That's
don't get me wrong,
fascinating.
I'd much rather go see them during the day so I can be home at night. So
Yeah, and then you can just work on it there. That's fascinating though. Damn. So what are like the next 10 years look like for you?
well, the biggest thing I'm going to be working on actually this year is not so much recruiting people to sell with me, but actually recruiting other brokers who specialize in other insurance so that we can partner up and then um, have a chance where they could work with people that I work with and I can work with people that they work with, like businesses that they work with. And then they'll end up getting pieces of the commissions. There's a guy out of Missouri that we work with who, yeah, he
Yes.
didn't hardly cold call at all, and he was just working with people, and he'd give them a big portion of the commission for him to walk them in the door, kind of thing.
That's fascinating and ingenious. So basically, like,
Well,
is it someone who offers
yeah,
a service that you don't, and then it's just like you're kind of like cross pollinating?
yeah.
Is that the word?
Well, the biggest one is health insurance brokers because we don't actually sell health insurance. But if they have a whole bunch of companies that they sell health insurance to, we've got a nice set of stuff that we can offer along with that. Um,
Oh,
goes well, and then they get a piece of the action, and they're not doing any extra work. They can keep on going out and selling health insurance to other people.
Yeah. Now, how do you get access to like all these different products? Like, since you're how do you set yourself up as a broker? I guess is the question.
Well, you join what's called an IMO. So that Cardinal Senior Benefits, I'm sure, is what you would call an insurance marketing organization or an agency. And typically those big companies like we do some supplemental with a group out of Cigna, which is a big health insurance company.
Yep.
We also use Manhattan Life, but we've got some different partners that we work with that are part of an agency. Although it's kind of like each of us has our own agency as well, but we partner up together, and then they'll give us commissions and setups. And then like I've got all these different products, and I get a different commission on almost every different product.
That makes sense. But then, so like if I wanted to start this, obviously, let's assume I'm licensed. So I have to go to Cigna, for example, and be like, "Hey, I want to sell your insurance." Is that
No, you're wanting to go to the middleman, the agency first, who has the relationship with Cigna already. That generally makes it easier.
I see. Wow, that's what you mean like you want to teach people the technical stuff, because that's hard enough to like wrap your head around all that.
Well, yeah, because they want to work with an agency that's going to bring them, $7 million worth of business over the next number of years, as opposed to one person that's going to bring them $500,000 worth of business over the next 5 years, let's say, or whatever.
Yeah. Wow. Dude, the insurance world is complex. It's bananas.
Well, yeah. Well, just to give you another idea, so a company I've been trying to call on, there's a John Deere group. They have like 30 different locations, but it's one of those things. You think of John Deere and combines and farm equipment, and there's a location, but that one location is a part of a group of 30 of them. And you don't have a lot of guys that own one John Deere location. That's not very common. They usually own like a minimum of 5 or 10 John Deere locations, so they can buy them. So they can buy combines at wholesale and then sell them at retail, that kind of thing.
Oh, so then you're like set. You set for a while.
Right. So if you're driving out in the country and you see a John Deere, underneath there'll be a name of it. And some of the different ones, there's the one that I'm trying to call, it's called 21st Century Equipment. They're out of Scottsbluff. But there's another one called American Implement that's in Western Kansas. There's another one that 21st Century just bought some dealerships from called Four Rivers Equipment. And so there's groups of John Deere. And it's the same with like car dealerships. You'll hear of car dealerships, and there's like 10 of them owned by the same guy. It's the same thing. They're buying cars from Ford, but they're buying lots and lots and lots and lots of F-150s,
That's so bananas. Man, this world, it gets complicated, but business is good. I mean, did you notice anything like change? I mean, I feel like insurance is one of those like recession/pandemic proof products, because if anything, people thought they needed it more when they thought everyone's going to die. So,
I will say I was selling more life insurance when people were worried about COVID, for sure.
Wow. That's fascinating, man. Dang, dude.
That's
so cool. I like that. That's cool. Well, hey, if people are listening, you're thinking, Will, how do I work with Will? I'm a salesperson. I don't need to be motivated, but I want to learn the trade. Feel free to message us.
Well, what I will say is the big reason you end up staying for 20 years is because of the residual income, which is the little commission that you get on each person that's still paying their premium every month from 5 years ago, from 10 years ago, from 15 years ago.
Yeah, because these policies go on for a while, years. And so people...
They certainly can, for sure.
Wow. Damn. So, like, if you're... Man, your residuals must be outrageous after so many years in business, though.
I wouldn't call them outrageous. I know people that have a lot more than me. But that's the goal, is to make them outrageous. That would be awesome.
$1 million. And then just, I'm out. Yeah. That's wild.
Well, that is kind of what Peter Ferre did. But he had about 200 agents under him that were really producing a lot of business for a bunch of years. And he's still getting paid on that. And that's why he's out on the ranch.
We need Peter to just sponsor us. That's what we need. Just like,
There you go.
hey, Peter, give me some of that residual sponsorship money.
Get people to come to his ranch.
Yeah, dude. That'd be so cool. Do like a reunion out there in Eastern Oregon.
Yeah.
I'm down. That'd be kind of fun. Peter, if you're listening, please come on the show. On a serious note. Dang. All right. Do you want to jump into some Southwestern stuff? I feel like we.
Sure.
I
can talk about Southwestern all day long.
Okay. How did you get recruited, man? How did I get recruited?
Yeah. That is a good question. So the funny thing was my freshman year at Wheaton, there actually was a sign, come to a Southwestern meeting, that was on the bulletin board right between, there was like two elevators. I lived on a 7-story dorm, and there was a sign, but I did not see it and I didn't go to the meeting. But my friend Jason Grimes did, and Jason and Jake Chesney and I were all in biology class my first day of college. Monday morning, my freshman year. Jason, Jake, and I ended up becoming Jake's lab partner the second day of college when we had biology lab. But Jason was in that class too. Jason and Jake played basketball together, and then Jason Kolb actually played basketball with him as well.
Jason Kolb is a beast.
Jason's one of my favorite people. Oh man.
What a good episode.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to go skiing again down there. Oh, goodness. Poor guy. Anyway, so the next year, Jason came back. He had gone to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan with Todd McWhirter. Todd was there. I remember I had seen Todd before I met him, but I had never actually met him. But I remember that's what it was. I got a little note in my mailbox that said, come to a meeting, make $5,500 and travel.
Done.
And I had gone to Wheaton actually to play soccer because I had actually, I don't know, I think I might have told you this. When I was in 10th grade, we moved from Newton, Kansas to São Paulo, Brazil to do missionary work. My dad was a pastor.
And you did say this.
And so I thought I was good at soccer because I lived down there. And I played soccer growing up. Like, that was my sport. But when I got down there, I realized I was not good.
Dude, not in Brazil.
But,
nobody outside of Brazil is good in Brazil.
Well, let me put it this way. When I was little, I was the forward. I was the striker. I was the one trying to score all the goals. I got down there. I played sweeper. I was in the back.
Yeah, you get back there. You're fast, white boy. Get your ass back there.
Yeah, exactly. But I couldn't dribble people like they could, like everybody else could, right?
Go chase Dino down.
Exactly. But I went to Wheaton, and then I get there, and it turns out they were way better. Like, Wheaton was a soccer powerhouse. Like, they had been to the Final Four Division III like a year or 2 years before I got there. And so they actually had like a second team, like a JV. And that's what I played my freshman year. And then I ended up messing up my ankle a little bit. And then I decided not to come back and play again. And I ended up getting a job. There was a sports information group, and I would go and I would take stats and get work study money because my dad was a pastor. I didn't have money to pay for super expensive Christian college, and Division III, you don't get scholarships. And the interesting thing was my second and third years, I had lots of grants when I started, and those grants got kind of moved over into extra loans and not as many grants. And I don't know if that was everybody or if that was just because I quit playing soccer, but
brutal.
I wanted to go make some money. I had to for the summer, and so I was gonna go to the meeting, and then I remembered I had to go see my advisor about classes or something like that. So I didn't go, but I went and I saw Jason, and I'm like, oh, I know Jason. Can you tell me about this? I got to go, but can I come back and meet with you later? And so I ended up going to lunch with him like the next day, and he pulled out the notebook and he had me fill out. In fact, I've got it right here.
No
we had
way.
these green sheets.
Have stuff. Yeah.
Oh,
I love
The
it when
green
people have
sheet.
the memorabilia. Let's go.
So there was a green sheet that would fill out that was like your information sheet when you went into an interview.
Yeah, they still have those. They still do those.
And I still
30
have the
years
one that I
later.
filled out.
There it is. Oh my.
Recommended by Jason Grimes. I even filled out the whole back of it.
Oh, your camera's a
So
little blurry
funny.
because it's blurring your background. So it's blurring the.
It's all good. I mean, it was just, I mean, I got, yeah.
That's
There's like your parents'
wild.
names and their address in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
And is that the same sheet that you would recommend people for? That's what they started doing.
Oh yeah, no, there was a place on here to put more people. Yeah, for them to interview.
To recommend your homies.
Although the thing about Wheaton was because it's so small. Once we had a bunch of people there that were selling, you didn't really need to like refer people. It was just a matter of like finding out who was open minded. But Southwestern got a reputation like after my first or second summer. I think a lot of people thought we went around and ripped people off, honestly, because they couldn't imagine that all of us made this much money because we crushed it my first summer and my second summer.
Yeah, because okay, so you guys had Pat Roach, you guys had Todd McWhirter, no slouches in the book field. You guys had yourself, Jason Kolb, Jake Chesney, all book guys, and then later on, you guys had Sheridan McDonald, who also sold a ton of books. Like,
yeah, he was after my time. I don't think I've ever actually met him.
Oh,
but yeah,
he crushed it. He sold so many books.
Yeah, sure.
So, but there's at least 5 or 6, probably 10 of y'all that were just out there going to make 20, 30, 40 grand.
Well, so my first summer, Todd was number 1 in the company, 10,000 units. We had the number 3 rookie, my roommate Jeff Farmer, who's another soccer player. He sold 5,700. Pat sold 4,300 and like 50. We had a girl named Brianna Banner. She sold like 4,320. And then I sold like 4,140. And then we had another kid, Mark Kang, who sold like 3,200. And another guy, Mark Elmer, who sold like 2,500.
Just crushing.
And then we had one guy named Mark Brown, who sold like 1,700. And he thought he sucked. And he made the trip and didn't even go because he thought he sucked. Because we all sold so much more than he had. So yeah, we had number 3, number 8, 9, 11, and like 30 of all the rookies in education my first summer.
What do you think it was? Was it Craig? Was it you guys? Was it like a mixture?
Well, we went to North Dakota. I think it was the territory for sure.
It does matter. And you've heard it, but damn it. And there's people listening who are like, no, it doesn't. It does. It does matter so much. It matters so much. What you sell, man. What are you talking about?
All I can tell you is Todd always had virgin, beautiful territory.
Yeah, always. And somehow he sold the most. Like, imagine.
And when I was a 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th year bookman, I always had virgin, pristine territory myself, too. So.
Imagine.
When I was the one choosing where everybody sold, yeah.
There's a reason. Listen, right here. This might be fighting words. But if you're in Southwestern, especially if you sold, and first years, if you're hearing this, sorry if this is the first time you're hearing this, but it does matter. Your manager is lying to you. And if you're a manager and you're going, no, we're not, let me prove it to you. Ask your OL why they are selling where they're selling, and if they would switch with like some first year that's not doing so hot at sales school, because that's how it works. I was just at this I know this because I was just at the very last sales school that they had in 2023. I was there because my brother was doing since Dan Moore left,
yes.
He's
the sales manager now, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And he's doing the more speech, or not the more speech, the Mr. M speech. So while I was there, he gave a speech. He's doing his thing. He's on stage again afterwards, and I'm walking around, and there's OLs all over the hotel, because they're spreading out. They're not really practicing their sales talk because they're OLs. They're organizing the org, and they're choosing territories. and they got a map laid out, and they're highlighting who's going to go where. Now, you ask them why they're going where they are going, and why they are not going where that one first year is going. And if they tell you anything other than because it's worse territory, they're lying to you. That's why.
Well, there is one other answer, and that is they're near the middle of the whole area,
It's central,
so people can get to them. But that's the only other possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they tell the first years. Oh, we're going here because it's in the middle of the org, so people can come follow. This is true, but you still get to pick where the middle is.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, and I will say, Todd was always way out on the edge. He was never in the middle, so.
Exactly. So that's counterintuitive. It's because there's better territory over there. And here's the deal: the only time it doesn't matter for people who listen before I get some manager message me on Facebook going, "It's not true." Listen. It doesn't matter if you know how to sell in all of the territories. We've talked about this before on here. It's obvious. But if you're used to country, low, middle income, and then all of a sudden you get tossed into high, big brick suburbia, you're going to eat some shit until you figure out how to work there. Or maybe you're natural, or you get that power name and it works. But generally speaking, when you switch to a vastly different territory, if you're used to suburbia and you get tossed into low end, really spread out booty sticks, you're gonna struggle for a little bit until you figure it out, or you might not. But it does matter. There's a reason why everyone says when we're on the show and we ask them what their favorite kind of turf is, they always say country, ideally middle to high income country. That's not super spread out. That's like the golden territory. Everybody knows it. It's the best. Don't argue with me on this. All right.
So
nobody's
funny.
arguing with me on this, but it's true. It's true.
Hilarious.
Yeah, man. Okay, so tell me about your first. I'd love first. Do you remember sales school? Do you remember your first customer, your first store? Do you remember those like little first instances?
Some of them, and I've thought about it since I've watched all your episodes. So yeah, we went to North Dakota or sales school. So this is what I was going to tell you is I think Todd kind of thought I was going to quit because he gave me the shittiest territory to start with. Just so you know, I was selling on. I started in close to Fargo, North Dakota, moved out, and when I hit a line, all of a sudden I was selling over a guy named Ray Lang who had sold 7,000 units there the summer before, and
brutal.
Yeah, I'll get to that in a second. But sales school, our keynote address that sales school was Charlie Tremendous Jones, and we got the book. And I remember just thinking he was really weird because he was kind of talking about having a good attitude, and he would like and just be kind of crazy. And I remember thinking that part was crazy and kind of weird. But Pat thought it was great, and he went backstage and ended up meeting him and shaking his hand. I remember thinking that was also kind of weird, but whatever. The other thing I remember vividly was the Two Princes Spin Doctors song that they played at the end, right after everybody was all fired up at the very end and we were getting ready to leave the next day. And all these guys dancing around in the front of the War Memorial after Charlie Jones was done talking. And I do remember Mort, and I memorized my sales talk and all that kind of stuff. But as we were going out, I had thought about bringing my golf clubs, and I was going to, because I had sold Cutco before, and I knew you had to work in the evening, but I was thinking the afternoon it'd probably be pretty slow, and I was thinking I might go home, put on my my workout clothes and maybe go to the park and shoot hoops, or play on the playground. And I had even talked about that a little bit, and I remember on the way out to the book field, Todd like sitting me down in the car and telling me I was going to live with Pat, and Pat was going to do really well, and I had to work hard for Pat, and I'm just going, Okay. I'm just here to make some money, dude. I didn't know this was like a team thing. Don't get me wrong. I played sports my whole life, but I didn't realize it was that much of you got to do this for your roommate, that kind of thing. And, so my first door did not have kids. So that whole thing, that's like a myth to me, that the idea that the first door bought from you, because the first door was like on a two roads out in the country on the corner, and the dude didn't have kids. I ended up going around a little ways around and going into a subdivision. And the first sale was a beautiful Bible story.
Lovely.
$20. Like we had the My Fun book, which is like your Mufu, which had a cassette tape with it. And that was like $25. And then we had the beautiful Bible stories you could sell separately. It was like $22 or something like that.
The Mufu had a tape to it? What a time.
No, it wasn't a Mufu. It was called the My Fun book. So the education division had, for probably my first 5 or 6 years, a My Fun book, which was not the Mufu. That was Power Division. I remember like later in my years, they brought the Mufu over to education and stopped selling the My Fun book. But the My Fun book was like one of the Mufus, but it had a cassette tape with it. It had songs with it and stuff.
Awesome. I mean, ideal for any mom.
Oh, perfect. And we sold it just like we sold the Mufus. It was just, $25. You could throw it. You could throw it like a Frisbee,
Oh, goodies.
But my second customer is the one that ruined me probably for my first 2 weeks, because I get in, it's like one of the later in the evening, like 7:38, maybe 8:30 at night. I get in and they give me the procrastination objection. And we're just talking about 2 handbooks, $100. They're $48.95, I think $97.90. And I came back the next morning and they bought. So my second sale was a suicide call. Yes.
No, that'll ruin your career.
Well, it ruined me for about 10 more of those before I kind of realized that, I got lucky on that one.
Yeah.
So I had to learn my lesson the real hard way on that.
You went through 10 suicide calls before you decided maybe I shouldn't have done that. Well, but that's fair. If your second customer ever follows through by some miracle.
Yes. Yeah. And it was a miracle. Yes.
Wow. And for people listening who didn't sell books, and you saw the definition on the screen, but there's a reason it's called the suicide call. And I know we're trying to be sensitive to mental health issues, but you have to have some mental health issues to go back to a house that you were already at. You dropped the price and they said, we're going to think about it. And you come back. It's like, what's that feeling like? It's kind of, we've all done it. We all believed, you believed way more. It's kind of like, it's like dating that person that's way out of your league and then they cheat on you. Not break up with you. They cheat on you. And then you're like, I'll still take her back. Like it's that. It's the same.
Oh, goodness.
It's.
I've not had that experience, but I'm guessing it is similar. Yes.
Or even if they just break up with you, you're like, no, Barbara, we can still do this. And you're like, Barbara's gone, dude. Barbara's been gone. You're out here coming back to Barbara's door with like the jukebox, or the cassette player, like.
Oh, the jam box, like Can Say Anything.
Playing music to her door, and she's like, bro, move on. That's a suicide call.
Yes.
Oh, it's so brutal.
Goodness.
It's especially brutal when you show up and it was like mom and you drop the price and she says, oh, come back. My husband will be here. He's got the car.
And then he comes out on the porch.
Oh, dude. The fact that, listen. Yeah. The fact that I mean, we sold 10 years apart. My first summer was 2012. Your last was 2002, right? I think. Yeah. Like, the fact that we have that same shared, you could finish that story for me. It shows that this is an experience that we all faced. Sell 2,000 units, sell 10,000 units, sell 200 units. We all went back to a house where dad comes back outside with his arms crossed, like, yeah, no, we thought about it. We don't want it.
We're good.
And you drove 20 minutes.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's brutal. It's
the worst.
That's such a shitty feeling. I don't know why that's so funny to me right now, but some poor first years listening to this in the middle of the book field about to go to a suicide call. So we're saving them.
Well, the crazy thing is, in what we do, I've sold many, many suicide calls.
Oh, I lost your camera.
That is crazy.
Huh.
Camera's unplugged. like in my computer.
Huh. Well, you know what? We can keep talking. We're just gonna do this without a video podcast this time, if that's cool.
Oh, hold
'Cause we're
on. It
way
says
too.
start cam. Maybe I accidentally hit something.
Oh, you might have hit something. Listen, we don't edit out these technical difficulties because I think it's funny, because we take what we do seriously, but not ourselves too seriously, and this is part of the fun.
No.
This makes this conversation natural. You know what I'm saying? I hate it when I listen to podcasts and they're like edited out for only the good parts, and it's like, no, give me that backstage stuff that we don't get. You know, the full combo. But, damn, man.
Oh, it's killing me.
I mean, I can pause it here real quick. Okay.
Yeah,
we're back.
like my third summer, my seventh summer, I was the OL. I got the best territory I could find.
Oh,
And I would find out who had sold where, when, you know, all that kind of stuff. And by that point, you know everybody in the company and anybody that was a big hitter that, oh, who sold in this area last year and the year before and the year before and the year before. And I'd find out who sold when. But I got to tell you about my third week. I had, so like my first week, I had about 100 and some units. My second week, I hit like 230. My third week, that's what it was. The Friday and the Saturday of my second week, I had kind of curled into a small town and found a couple of little pockets. And I had like 4 people in a row sign up one day. And then on Saturday, I had like 3 people sign up. And I'm like, yes, I figured this out. And then I go out on Monday morning and I had just kind of come out of those 2 little pockets, little neighborhoods. And I get into Horace, North Dakota. And that Monday I did 48 demos, 5 sit downs, and sold 1 5-unit book. And everybody had seen them last year, and half of them had bought them last year from Ray Lang. And and it was just like, Todd's killing me. And the crazy thing was, they actually moved me out of rooming with Pat, and we were in like a college student apartment complex. Like we had no furniture. We were in this like crazy, just empty apartment. And then Jason Grimes, my student manager, and 2 other first years were like across the hall basically. And they moved me out of there and brought Mark Brown from living with Jeff Farmer over in Devil's Lake, North Dakota. And I ended up moving over there with Farmer and was with him most of the rest of the summer.
Showing him the ropes.
Well, he was kicking my ass, actually.
To his measly 1,700 units.
Oh, Mark Brown was the 17th. Farmer was the one that sold 5,700 his first year.
Just wild.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy. That's kind of crazy when first years hit those big numbers.
Yeah, well, and I had 3 of them. Jake was I was Jake's student manager. He was number 1 first year, and then my 6th summer, we had Dave Punkashar, whose brother Micah had come out with me his 5th summer, and Dave and Micah were from Brentwood, Tennessee, and Dave was the number 1 rookie in the education division that summer. And then there was a guy named Rick DeSoto who was a sales manager with Soder back in the 70s, and his son Ricardo. We had been going to Cornell for years and years, and Ricardo, the junior, was going to come sell, and he was going to come sell. And finally, he was a wrestler. And his 5th year at Cornell, he had gotten on the wrestling team. He lost the chance to go to nationals by 1 point his 5th year in wrestling. And so he was like a high powered wrestler. And, but his dad had sold books for 7 summers. He had been grooming him to sell books his whole life. And he came out and he was the number 1 rookie. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, he's still the rookie record holder in the Superstar book.
Yeah, it's like 8,000. We need to find him.
Yeah.
Do you still keep in touch with Rick?
I haven't talked to him in a long, long time. That was actually part of the bitterness because his dad decided that he should be under Chris Samuels the next year. And so he wasn't even under me the next year. But I was his student manager when he sold all those books his first year.
Damn it, Mr. Soto.
Yeah, well, I was immature. It is what it is.
I mean,
I honestly, yeah, I would say so.
But we were all immature. I think that's when. I mean, I've shit on a Southwestern a couple times already during this episode. But to be fair, I mean, we're like 18 to 20-year-olds, 22, 23-year-olds, 25-year-olds leading
Well,
other
actually, by
18
this
to,
point, I was like 28, but I was still immature.
we're so young, man. I mean, it's funny when
Yeah.
people. It's funny to me when you have like nowadays you have these kids, and I don't know how people really do it with Facebook and YouTube and the internet being able to like Google Southwestern and it wants to autocorrect Southwestern pyramid scheme question mark like
Yeah.
so like it's tougher to recruit, it's tougher to sell, and I get it, and Matt props that people still do, but like it's just always funny to me when it's like some 18-year-old that comes. If you YouTube Southwestern, there's some girl on there. She's one of the first few videos will come up, and she's like just shitting on Southwestern, calling it a scam, calling it all this stuff, and it's like, look, we know there's problems with the company. We've all faced them. We've all had, understood the culture, but you can't go out and just say it's a scam, because there's people that are out there that would do great in this opportunity that you're scaring them out of it. And it
Yeah.
sucks, Also, your student manager was 19 years old on their second summer. It's okay if they messed it up. Like, chill.
Yeah.
Like, this is not like if Google's doing this to you, yeah, that speaks to like poor management. But they're learning to be managers like you're learning to sell. So you got to give them some
Yeah.
grace that they're not going to get it perfect. And now that doesn't like speak to all the other really horrific, egregious things that probably have happened that we can't speak for. I'm just talking about the general
Right.
population, right? It's hard. So I get it. So you came back for more summers. How did you know you wanted to come back?
Well, I honestly didn't think I had done that well. I sold 4,000 units, number 11. I hit President's Club 3 times.
Same.
But Pat had beaten me, and Brianna had beaten me, and Farmer had just crushed me. But then I get back to checkout, and I had car problems, and I was spread out. I was in like 6 different school districts all over the state of North Dakota, and so my deliveries were just horrendous. And I had one car blow up, and I wrecked another car. I got it fixed, and my deliveries were nuts, right? And but when I got back to checkout, everybody is telling me how great I did, and I just loved all of that praise, and so it was coming back. Put it that way.
Yeah, same. We had the same first summer. I was number 9, sold about 4,100 units.
Yep.
Got my ass whooped by the number 1 first year. She was also in our org. Or like she was in the force. She wasn't in our specific summer org, but she was in our group of book kids.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, but people were like, "Oh my God, I saw you on the pace hitter. You were so great." I remember this. I had Chris Salata, who at the time was the one that was selling 10,000. He was like the Todd McWhirter of the time.
Yeah.
We called him Chris sells a lotta because
yeah.
Yeah. And he goes, "I remember you." I go, "Me?" He goes, "Yeah. You were the kid that I was trying to get my kids to beat." And when a guy like Chris Salata is saying that to you, you're like, well, I got to come back and do another summer. Like, I got to come back and do more. So, yeah.
I got to do. Yeah, they tell you how great you are. You're like, okay.
Nobody's told me how great I was. I mean, it's not true. It's not true, but that's how you feel.
Well, I think back on like high school down in Brazil, where I went to like this little tiny school, and I played all the sports, and I was in choir and quiz bowl and this and that. And then I went to Wheaton, and everybody was as good as I was. And I mean, they're all this kind of thing. And I found this, and I wasn't as good in soccer as I thought I was. And I thought I had to be good at stuff to make people like me. So,
yeah.
Oh, I'm good at this. Maybe people will like me.
You know what? You're making me realize so many different things about this aspect. I haven't gotten this like introspective. Maybe I need to drink more of this beer on the air. Like, you're right. That's exactly right. I've alluded to this before from my personal story, but I remember my sales school when Dan Moore has everyone stand up if they were like, captain of the whatever sports team, and everybody stands up. They're like, all right, stay standing if you were captain of this. If you volunteered, if you had a job, and most people stay standing. If you got straight A's, most people stay standing. And you're like, holy shit, I'm not special amongst this crew of humans.
Right.
Even if there's still like 60 people standing, there was like 700 people standing, and you're like, I suck. I'm like, I'm average here. And it's the first time in your life and it's also other people in my life had told me I was awesome because my parents, they're supposed to tell you that, but teachers, I was getting straight A's, I was everywhere. And so your teachers and stuff, they tell you that. But the real honesty of it is it wasn't hard to be good at that stuff. And maybe that sounds arrogant, but this was hard and I was good at it, And so that meant so much more to have people who were better than me at this hard thing that I was good at to tell me you can do better and to believe in you in that. So there is something about that where you're like, this is the first thing that was like, I had to sweat for this, but I did well. My people who are superior and better than me at this job are telling me that I can do better and I am good at this. I'm going to listen to that because I know what it took to get here because I busted it. Because it's hard work. It's hard work, man. Going door to door 80 hours a week it's fucking hard.
Books was definitely harder than any of those other things I had done for sure. Like way harder.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. In my life, it was a little different. I always say the hardest thing was becoming a U.S. citizen, but selling books is right up there with that. Like it's not. It's hard. It's hard, man. It's just hard.
Yeah.
and people are listening. It's also that's another thing that's funny to me is you remember when you were recruiting and you'd have that first year that would quit and they'd be like, I didn't know it was gonna be like this, and it's like, dude, you've been.
I tried to tell you for a month or for a semester. Like, how hard it was.
What are you talking about? I was sitting down with you at the union telling you that this was going to make you cry, and you said, I'm not a little bitch. And then here we are. You're crying to me about why you have to go home. Like, we didn't lie to you. Like, we told you. No, in sales school, there is a whole meeting about how this is going to suck, and you should turn back now because it's about to get hard. Like,
yep.
So I always told it. It's also hard to have sympathy for the kids that quit early and then they start bitching about it to like their friends at school because you're like, dude, what are you talking about? I didn't lie to you. I told you. Oh man, that's fantastic. Did you know you wanted to be a DSM though that early, or like when did it click for you that you're like I'm gonna do this?
No, because it was after. No, I was very focused. I was going to be a teacher and coach basketball.
Wow.
And that was kind of where I saw myself going. But I wanted to make a difference in kids' lives and that kind of thing. And then my dad passed away. And that was at the end of my first week of my student teaching experience, which was down in the city in Chicago. Because I went down to where they had good NBA players came out of that high school. I mean, I don't know if you're an NBA fan, but Doc Rivers went to the high school that I student taught at. If you've heard of Doc Rivers.
Yeah, I know Doc Rivers.
Yeah, so he was in high school All-American in 1980, But I basically, that was the hardest thing ever to me, was like in the inner city, and I was not ready for it. And it was not, you had to work as hard as the book field, but I wasn't motivated the same way because it wasn't competitive in any way. And I was just trying to keep my head above water. And I just lost my dad who, had a heart attack and was gone down in Brazil, and And so what I ended up doing, I remember going and telling my cooperating teacher that I was going to do something else and not teach. And she kind of like, that's probably best. And I was like, that was the first time I ever failed at anything, honestly, was my student teaching. And but my third summer, I finished number 3 in the company and sold 9,200 units and had 700 customers and all that kind of stuff. And so I was ready, or that was right after. So I student taught in the fall, had a spring semester, went and sold my third summer in Michigan. And, and Jake was his second summer, and he sold, we crushed at our headquarters that summer. Jake sold 7,700. I sold 92, and Darrell Marcus sold like 5,500. And we had a good old summer. And Pat always gets mad and says he would have beat me, but he sold like 11 weeks, and I sold 14. I think I sold 15 weeks, but I started my deliveries at 14 and a half weeks because I had so many customers, and I had one of my rookies out there delivering books for me, and I shouldn't have had that. That didn't work out very well. I think my deliveries took like a month because I had so many weak customers, and it was just nuts. But after that, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go field manage because Craig told me I probably should do that. And so I did.
And that's when the idea started hitting you. But 9,000 units is no joke. What clicked? Like what, I mean, geez, in your third summer, that's a jump.
Well, I had gone from 4,100 to 5,500, but I was mad because Jake beat me. My rookie beat me my second summer. You know, he sold 6,200 and I sold 5,500. But I did beat Pat that second summer. I think he only sold like 51 or 52 or something.
Take that, Pat, for listening.
Exactly.
Boom.
Well, Pat and I always had that little competition going, but I was not near as good as he was. He's the one that had 44 people in a row sit down and say yes to him. That was our third summer that happened.
He did that?
But did he not? I thought he told you that story on the podcast.
Dude, listen,
You've had so many of them.
Well, not just that, but okay. What I understood to be the record was I thought it was Sharon McDonald with 27. But then afterwards, Pat called me and he's like, hey, I don't mean to like correct this, but I'm pretty sure I had more than 26. So if there is a record, I think I might have it unless someone sold more than me. You know, he's a humble guy, but he brings it. He's competitive at the same time. So he's like, I don't know if 26 is the record because he said he had more. And now
he had
I'm
hearing 42 or 44 sit downs in a row.
He never gave me the number, so I did not know that it was that many.
Well, there's another guy. So that guy Ryan Rutherford that I told you that I field managed with and worked with at Athlon, that dude, I don't know if he ever kept track of that kind of thing. But when I went so my second summer, like my sixth week, I drove from Nebraska. I sold outside of Omaha most of my second summer.
Oh, you sold in Nebraska?
Oh, baby. Iowa and Nebraska. Those are two great places to sell books, dude.
It's a great territory, man. Nebraska's amazing. People are so nice.
And my aunt and uncle lived in Lincoln for like 20 years in McCook. And yeah, my uncle was on the railroad and all that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. You told me about this. Your McCook connection.
Dude, yeah, my cousins lived in McCook. He got the job at the railroad in McCook, and then they moved him to Lincoln. And yeah. So I drove from Nebraska up to back to North Dakota, where Rutherford was selling the next summer after we had sold in North Dakota, right? And this dude's out there selling 42 units to every single family way out in the middle of nowhere. But he's working in majorly booked out area, but he would go to nothing but preschoolers, and then he'd sell them the whole bag. And so the guy did 9 calls, 8 sit-downs. No, 7 sit-downs. It was like 240 units on like 7 sit-downs.
Wild. And for people
9 calls.
That's wild.
And I bet you he probably sold more than 40 in a row because that dude, nobody said no to him. I mean, nobody said no. He sold like the one door demo he did, he sold a cookbook to. And then he had 1 no the whole day.
That's insane to think about, man.
Everybody bought from this guy. He's the best salesman I've ever seen in my life. And I've seen a lot of really, really good ones. I mean, there's some guys that were amazing. Kevin Johnson, for example.
Yeah. Ryan Alford.
Ron. Well, I've always heard that Ron was like me, like just a grinder, a worker, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm talking like pure sales, like guys that would just skill. Yeah. Pat Roach is another just phenomenal.
Yeah. Matt Atchison, Dustin Hillis.
Probably those guys. What I was going to say, the crazy thing about Ryan was that Todd had gone and followed Ryan our first summer, and Todd had always been the guy that would hit 600 every single week, and then he went and followed Ryan like his 3rd or 4th week of our first summer, and he came back and hit more like 8 weeks in a row or something like that. And just from watching somebody who was so good, and Ryan was he didn't do pre-approach. He just asked where the next family was with little kids, and swing set to swing set, selling
all the bag.
42 units, and then there was all payment plans, 4 checks held out over 2 months, post-dated everything. So pretty funny.
This is before you could do credit card payments on the iPad. This is like old school.
Yeah. I mean, we could take a credit card. We had a little clicker thing.
The thing, yeah.
But we
They had to call it in.
yeah, you'd have to call it in and all that stuff.
Use a rotary phone.
But not a. I don't know.
Seriously.
People just didn't like to use the credit card as much as they'd like. They wanted to write a check for everything, you know. Now, that's what it was. They didn't have as many debit cards then
Yeah, that was
as
the way
they
of the
do
world.
now
You just did check. I mean, you did checks into like
for everything.
In 2008 is really maybe when that started changing. But people would write checks. I worked.
Really?
I worked at a shoe store at the mall. It was like a high-end shoe store. Through 2015, but the first 2 years of me working there, which would have been like 2010 and 11, I
Yeah.
remember people still paid with checks for their shoe, like for a big shoe, like somebody buy $400 for the shoes, and we'd still take.
They'd write a little
people
check.
also paid with card. We still had like this, the swiper, but it was still a preferred one of. Cash was obsolete, like it's been since checkbooks really, but like, or since credit cards really, but like. I still remember. I would say at least 40 to 60% of people who paid with check, like that was part of it. It was taking a check, and then some people were like, "Oh, okay, I got a credit card, debit card." So it was still like back in the day. That was like the way to do it. People didn't just
Everybody wrote
and
checks.
stuff. Everybody wrote checks, and you prayed that they would go through.
Oh yeah. Yep. Although I didn't seem to have problems with the checks going through until delivery, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's when the checks wouldn't go through. Because when you went to the bank to cash them.
And it's fascinating because I sold in 2012 and 13, and we were still up. It probably really wasn't until people started paying with iPads, because Southwestern's always been behind with this kind of stuff. It's just so weird how it takes so long for them to adapt. But I guess it's the strength and weakness of being around for so long. But my first and second summer, for sure, I remember you had to, like, since you didn't have your phone on you, because now they have their phones on them all the time. But back then, they were like, hey, put your phone away, put it in your trunk.
Right.
And then when you needed to process a credit card, you'd use Mrs. Jones's phone. And you would dial in the number.
Yep.
And then you type in your credit card number, and then it would process it, and it would go through, and there was like a 2% fee or whatever. But like, that was so archaic, even for 2013, that you had to dial in the credit card. Like, what the hell?
Oh, yeah, that's true now that you think about it. Yeah, that's the way it was when we did it, but that was in the 90s.
So, it took them 20 years to figure that out.
Yeah.
Damn, man. So then as you're going along and you become a DSM and things starts happening, was there a point where you felt like you had made it? I feel like maybe since you had to field manage being a DSM, you never really felt like that.
No, because I got everybody taken away from me, and I got I think I had 20 student managers given to me that I was supposed to work, and I talked, I think, 8 of them into coming back. So I basically had a small org for my whole DSL base. Now, the way we got paid at that point was I got paid the most selling personally that first summer, because I sold like 10 or 12 weeks my first year as a DSM, but I was getting paid 40% on the books, and then I get paid on myself on my team, and I got like 10% on my team, and then I got 10% on my base.
On their base, yeah.
I'm getting like 60% on every book that I personally sold. I want to say actually that was the year I made the most money at Southwestern, because I had like a 10-man team, and I was the one that was recruiting the most of the people, because those 8 people, none of them were like field managing or any of that kind of thing. So I probably had 30 kids that I took out, and that was my whole entire DSM base, was that my group.
Yeah, that's right. And did you still have to have like 85,000 units in base to get to that level?
No, it wasn't set up like that. You didn't have to have, there wasn't a set scale at that point. It was like you could have somebody come in at a lower setup. And that was kind of actually the way they brought me in, was because he didn't give me all my guys. And then my 2 best guys, Micah and Dave Punkestar, neither of them came back. They had like crushed it the year before. And then Micah actually came back the year after that. Like, he skipped a summer. But I don't think Dave ever sold again. So it was like he kind of thought those 2 were going to be my studs, and then neither of them came back that year. And
let me ask you this.
Sure.
As someone who's seen, well, first of all, you've sold a lot of books. You've recruited a lot of people. You've seen other people recruit a lot of people, and you've seen a lot of people sell a lot of books. What do you think is like the common thread? You got two people equally talented. I haven't asked this to somebody in a long time, so I'm curious what you take.
Roger. You asked Roger Smith about this, I remember.
Yeah. What makes a person better? You're right. Roger was the last person I asked this to, I think. It's been a while.
See, Roger and I lived together for a couple of years when I was a sales manager in Nashville.
Roger's the man.
And you know who would come and sleep in the basement on a sleeping bag during checkout? Your boy Grant Greeter came and would stay at checkout in the basement in a sleeping bag.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Oh yeah, dude.
Wow, that 2001 crew is we're still proud of it. That 2001 #1 campus crew.
That's
those guys
hilarious.
were stacked. Those guys.
And that's what kind of the time I'm talking about. 2000, 2001, 2002.
Yeah, I mean, they had Yvette, Nick Henderson, Matt Atchison, Station Miller, Brian Wilson, Grant. Like,
I don't think I ever
units.
told her this, but I had a big old crush on Station Miller. I'm pretty sure she was dating. She had a boyfriend back in Lincoln or some shit. I don't remember.
Hey, man, those book crushes, those book goggles are real.
For sure.
They are. That's another thing that transcends the decades you sold, man.
Oh, that's so funny. So I got to tell you this story. So I do have one claim to fame. This is my claim to fame because this guy was famous before this happened. And he was actually the very first Ponytail podcast that I watched was Roger Sipe.
Legend.
One of the greatest guys ever, right? And he followed me on the book field. So my fourth summer, I'm in, I sold in Olean and in Jamestown, New York. And Roger was up in Rome, New York. I don't know if you know where Rome. Yeah, I lived in Olean for like the first 6 weeks of the summer until they actually made an announcement in the school that I was a fraud. And so I had to stop selling in Olean.
Did you know I sold in that area?
Yeah, I remember hearing something like you were in upstate New York at some point.
Yeah,
but yeah.
I was right there. It was
Jason and you were talking about, because I moved out of my headquarters with Scott Hytink and went over and lived with Jason and Johnny D and Joel Givens in Jamestown for like the last half of the summer, or the last 4 weeks probably.
I wasn't supposed to sell in Olean, but I started selling in some. It was my first summer. I didn't know someone was selling there, and someone was like, "There was already a guy here last week," and I was like, "What? There shouldn't have been." And then that's when I found out I was actually bleeding into someone else's turf. But but I was right there. That's a beautiful area of the country. Anyway, sorry.
Well, and I sold a cookbook to the president of Cutco, and they were there, and they're like, "We know Jerry Heffel." Isn't that funny? And I was like, "Yeah, hilarious. I sold Cutco for a little bit. I got Cutco knives up in my drawer upstairs in the kitchen."
That's wild. Mad respect. Anyway,
yeah, right.
Roger Sipe, you had
So we had done one of those. We called them border wars back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Where his group came over. So I'm over kind of way in Western New York. Jake's in my org, and then Pat is up more by Rochester, and he's got a whole org. And then Roger's way up by Syracuse, and they all came down. We had this huge meeting, and we're skiing and recognition at the very end, and I think I had like 780 units, but Roger had 820 or 830. So he was the top guy, and I was second. But I beat Pat. That was a key thing.
You hear that, Pat?
Anyway, and I want to say about 4 weeks later, Roger calls me up and wants to know if he can come follow me. And I'm like, sure, come on down. And I guess he was having a little bit of a attitude thing, maybe at the end of the summer. He had a huge team. I mean, that whole org was, I think, 20 of them were on his team, and he was getting ready to go back to check out and whatnot, but he was still trying to crush it at the end. So he comes and he watches me, and this is just kind of classic the way I roll. But I get into this house, middle of the afternoon, north of the lake in Jamestown, Lake Chautauqua, and this lady I'm not doing a good job of reading her, and it probably takes me 40 minutes to close her, but she ends up buying, and we walk out of the house, and Roger's just like, "You suck so bad. You should have closed her after 15 minutes. She wanted to buy." And I'm just like, "You're right. I should have. You're correct." And he's like, "But your attitude is so damn good. That's why you sell so much." And he's like, "I got a long drive. I'm going home now. I saw what I needed to see."
And he went home. What a stud.
Just
Also, what a
so
compliment
funny.
to get from someone. Your attitude
Well,
to sell so much.
It was, I think about it to this day. I still don't always read people well enough and close quick enough, but it just makes me think of the Dan Moore advanced sales of the sales cycle and the buying line and all that stuff. But anyway.
I mean, it's still pretty wild though that like someone like Roger's following you. I feel like I would have gotten nervous.
Well, yeah, no, I totally did for a little bit, but then it was kind of like, oh, we're just out on the book field. I mean, where else? This is where I'm supposed to be. God has me on the book field right now. We're just out here having fun and joking around and having a go. I just loved having people with me so I could joke around and be goofy and have a good time with somebody instead of just with Mrs. Jones, But okay, so here's the other part was, so you guys always had the Freddie Awards at GRS, right?
Yeah.
So before there was the Freddies, because I remember when we started the Freddies, that was probably 2000. We would always have a talent show at GRS.
I've heard about this.
And Roger was the guy that ran the talent show.
He did stand-up
until he left the business because he was a stand-up and he'd come up and do his little thing. I don't know. I thought it was a kind of a big thing. He was so funny and such a great speaker and all that kind of thing. Well, he left the business. Well, Kevin Johnson and I took over the talent show, and it turned into just a bunch of people with guitars coming up and making up Bookfield songs, doing pop songs on our guitars and making book words out of it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, and so my buddy Micah had come up with the Counting Crow song, Long December, and he turned it into a Long Summer. And maybe this house will be better than the last. And can't remember the last thing Soder said as we were leaving. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Epic.
And then, so we would do just tons of that. I think we did it. Kevin and I did it for 2 or 3 years. And then they decided to do the Freddies and we didn't get to do our talent show anymore. And I remember being so bummed and having a bad attitude about it because we just had so much fun doing that talent show. It was just awesome. But, the other crazy thing.
Show.
Yeah, seriously, they got to bring back the talent show. But, so there was a guy named Jamie, and I was having a hard time. I was trying to think what his last name was, but he had gone to Kentucky, and then he had transferred to Belmont in Nashville, Belmont University. I don't know if you're familiar, but it's a big music school, and he ends up doing his senior production project. He made a CD of Bookfield songs, brought in these guys that were kind of professional sounding musicians, and made a whole CD. I mean, it still sounds great. I got it on my iTunes and all that kind of stuff. I still got the CD in a box somewhere.
Wait, where are those songs?
I got them on my iTunes. One of them I wrote the words to it. Small Town by John Mellencamp.
Who owns the rights to this?
I don't even know if anybody, but I still got the CD. But we used to sell those CDs for like the next 2 or 3 years. And then it was like his senior project. And the production was amazing, but it was like him producing it, Dude. And he had these session musicians that were from Belmont that were really great that played most of it. But he had Micah singing his Long Summer song on there. He had we did like Margaritaville, but it was like the Bookfield song. And then we had there's a song he turned it into The Last Pony. The Last Pony was a song, but it was called The Last Kiss by Pearl Jam. Was the pop? It is all pop songs, and we just changed the words and turned them into book songs.
Will, I need to find out who owns the rights to these songs. Is it him? Because I need to buy them and I need to play those on the podcast.
I don't know. I'd have to. Yeah, I'd have to. I'm like, who would know? I don't even remember Jamie's last name. Like my brain is dead. It's like, he probably does.
We gotta find out. Because I want them. I want to play.
You want those songs?
Oh my gosh, it'd be so funny to put them on like reels.
Can you hear my iTunes if I play something for you?
I might be able to through your mic, but the problem is, if someone like if Southwestern owns this, that might be a problem.
Oh, I don't know if Southwestern owns it or not.
I mean, I would imagine the writer does, so then that still might be. I mean, but it'd be hilarious to have. You know, it'd be
most
fun
of the
to have him on
writers.
the show.
Well, the lyrics were. I think it was like 6 or 7 different book guys wrote the lyrics.
God, that's interesting.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I mean, but these were all like pop and country songs from the '90s. You know.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love it, but for legal reasons, I just have to make sure audio's weird that way. We found out.
Yeah.
That's why,
I get it.
Like what, for example, so a lot of people have been telling us that our intro song instead of like what it is, which I like our intro song, but that it should be Pony by Genuine, like
okay,
boom, boom, or whatever. Like I've tried, but it's not easy to get that stuff. And if it is, it's expensive.
Dig deep in your pocket, right?
Yeah, it's expensive.
Make that happen.
So it's like, I don't know if it's worth it, but at the same time, it's like. Those songs are so funny. I imagine if we had like a whole episode where we had him or some musician come on the air and just sing those for
yeah. Well, I mean, it's like because I did the Small Town, and I put my name in it. It's like that's Will's territory, you know, that kind of thing.
That's
I was born in a small town. I sold books in a small town. I'll probably die in a small town. It's probably where I'll hit Mort Utley, you know, that kind of thing.
That is hilarious, man.
Some of the fun stuff we did back in the day.
Man, you guys did some cool stuff. I think the culture was a little different back in the 90s and 2000s from what I've heard. It was a lot more common for people to be crushing it, at least compared to what it is now.
Well, it's interesting you say that. You were asking about what makes a great salesperson.
Oh yeah. Back to that.
So I told you I love going and talking. I love talking to old book people, right? So every chance I get, Shane Blick would have me come and talk to the kids in Boulder, and I would almost every year go up and talk to them, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then the Estonians or the Bulgarians that come out here, and I go out almost every summer and talk to those kids. And there's one little tweak that I've made, and this is from Family Heritage when I was training people, is we'd always talk about there's 3 things you got to do in order to be successful. You got to work hard, study hard, and be teachable, right? Well, I created a whole talk around what does that actually mean? Because it's like, work hard. Well, what does working hard really mean? I mean, Brookfield. What does studying hard actually, what does that really mean? What does being teachable really mean? And to me, studying hard is not just learning your sales talks. Because we would kind of gloss over that a lot of times. You got to work hard. You got to learn your sales talk. You got to learn your rebuttals. No, you got to become obsessed with learning how to sell is what you got to do. You have to become obsessed. And I told Jake's son, Matthew, that, and he went out and sold a bunch of books. I think it was the second summer he got a check for $40,000 or something like that. And I know that was something he had not heard before. And he was just like, oh, obsessed with learning to sell. And I'm like, every single summer I went and followed somebody. So there was a touch of obsession with wanting to do well. And I wanted it to do well because I wanted everybody to like me. So there's this deep seated need that I have to make people like me. So,
wow.
And I thought that was, I don't know, somewhere deep in my subconscious or whatever, that was the motivation. But
yeah,
I went and followed Todd. I mean, my 3rd summer, Todd's down in Georgia. He's got a whole different org, but I flew down there and followed him. My 4th summer, I flew from New York out to Wisconsin, followed this guy named Josh Hutchin, another guy you should probably have on there. He was an Eagle Blitz. He was a Blitz guy, I think. And that dude was, talk about an attitude. His attitude's way better than my attitude ever was. And then my 7th summer, I went and followed Chat Rickey, who broke the record. 98, he broke the company record, I'd say. Mm-hmm. And the summer after that, so 99, I went and followed him down in southern Missouri. And that one was easy because I could drive down there. But I always went and followed somebody. I think that was the last time maybe that I followed somebody. But I followed Ryan my 2nd summer, and
yeah,
I had a little bit of a slow start to my 2nd summer. But after I went and followed him, I had President's Club the whole rest of the summer after following Ryan that year. And
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I love that you mentioned this because people think that studying hard is just a sales talk, but there's so much more. I mean, mastering your intro, mastering from the masters of people there's people who are amazing closers and that was their strength. There are people who are incredible at the intro where, the buying atmosphere and the establishing rapport. I think that's important. People who are incredible. Like there was people I remember, like Brandon Q, who was a guy I sold with, and
Brandon, I met that guy. He came out here
Brandon?
one time.
Yeah.
He wanted to go to a Green Bay Packers game.
Yeah.
Frickin' Mark Rao called me up on the phone. I got a guy. I need you to get him some tickets. And I'm like, well, I can try. It's not exactly easy to get Broncos tickets. That's like getting Cornhusker tickets. That's like, and they were playing the Packers. That was one of the few games that year I didn't go to, but I think he did but he spent $500 or something to get into that game.
He's a big Packers.
Yeah.
Fan. If the Packers are losing, I know somewhere in the country Brandon is having a bad time. Cussing out of the TV screen. But yeah.
Well, they're playing the Cowboys.
I mean, yeah, and they don't have Rodgers now, and it's been an okay change.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Brandon Q, he was really good.
Yeah. One thing he did, like, I'll never forget this. He hit 10,000 units one summer, and when he was giving an advanced sales talk about how he did it, and he goes, I literally read the books. He goes, I bought myself a set, and I went page by page, just looking at what they had and what they didn't have. And he was like, so this is an extreme example of know your product. But I mean, there was nobody that knew the product better than him. And he was good. Like he studied them to the point where Brandon's one of those people who's just methodical. He's kind of like that Ron Alford workhorse where it's like, hey, if I just do this, well, I will hit my goal, period. There's no and he will hunker down and commit to the crystallizations of those goals without deviating. It's pretty impressive from a consistency standpoint. But one of the things he did was he literally read it. So you'd be like, oh yeah, if you go in page, it wasn't like he had it super memorized, but it was close enough where it was impressive where he'd be like, oh yeah, the social studies book has, page 300 something talks about the American Civil War, specifically about this part of the Civil War. He knew that. Now, is that the key to hitting 10,000 units? No, but it just speaks to what you're saying, where it's there's knowledge of the skill of selling, knowledge the demo. That would be he was improving his demonstration, even though sometimes that was the shortest part of the presentation. He never lost a customer because someone asked him a question he didn't know about the product itself, which is
he was obsessed with selling, obviously.
Yeah,
because he took the time to do that.
To know his product, yeah.
He really wanted to sell a lot,
Yeah. Now, in Southwestern is not as important. You can pretty much sell a lot of books without even showing the books if you really try to harp on the.
Well, didn't Dustin say that he only knew about 2 or 3 subjects in there or something like that?
Yeah, but what that does do is, for example, what he does now is he's a financial advisor,
right?
He manages, and so taking that same approach in that industry or in the insurance industry. Holy shit, does that help you? Because if you're the guy that knows all about all of it, you are the guy that is going to crush. Because those sales are a little bit more different, where it's not as an emotion. It could be an emotional sale, right? And that's fine. But people want to know at the end of the day, bottom line, what's up with this investment fund or what's up with this, mutual fund.
Oh,
and if you know that,
if you know what's up,
then you're the guy. You know what I'm saying?
You're an expert because they're not.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so
absolutely.
It's paying dividends literally for him now because it's he knows. And so it's just interesting that you're saying that because that's actually not something we've talked about much here before is people work hard, study hard, be coachable. But the study hard part is becoming a student of the game to the point where, and he was that way with comedy too. He studied the greats and really, really, really cool take on this. Well, I agree 100% with you. People don't really.
And then my other thought my other thought on, being teachable is doing stuff you don't want to do. Because, I can be teachable. I got straight A's in high school. No, it's not. That's not what I'm talking about.
No.
But that reminds me of cold showers because I didn't take a lot of cold showers my first half of my first summer. But I moved out with Farmer, and Jeff Farmer's kicking my butt. And it was the 7th week, and we had moved territories, and I hit 360 units, and that's my 7th week. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
the farmer had hit 650 units, and I'm just pissed. And so I go to the Sunday meeting. I go to Todd, and I'm like, we're going to do our personal conference. And I'm like, okay, can you listen to my demo? I got to figure out what the heck. Why is farmer just kicking my ass? And it was back to the basics week that week.
Yep.
Do you remember back to the basics? So we'd have a big checklist. Oh, you're doing all the little things. So he actually pulls this out. So he's not swayed by what I'm asking him in the PC. He's got his agenda. He's like, oh, well, let's look at the checklist. Are you getting out of bed at 6 a.m.? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sleeping on the floor. I don't even have a sleeping bag. I'm got a sheet and a sheet. It's not hard to pop out of bed at 6 a.m. He's like, are you taking, or are you, or no, are you getting up at 6? Are you popping out of bed? Yes, both. Third one, are you taking a cold shower? Farmer wasn't taking cold shower. Farmer didn't take cold showers that whole first summer. I promise you that. I'm not taking a cold shower. I was like, that's just stupid. And I mean, I know in sales school, I'd done a little bit of turning the cold water on at the end of the shower, that kind of thing. But Todd, after I told him I wasn't taking cold showers, he folds up his piece of paper, and that's the end of the PC. And he's like, take cold showers and we'll talk about this next week. And I'm like, I wanted to cuss his butt out, but I didn't. Anyway, so I go home to prove him wrong. And I took cold showers the whole week, and I hit President's Club for the first time.
What do you know?
And the funny thing is, that was my story I'd tell from the stage when I would get to talk in sales school, later, many years later. And I always kind of thought that a lot of people would make some of these stories up. That story is 110% completely correct. And you can ask him, well, he probably wouldn't remember the details of it, but never forget that stuff.
Yeah. For me, I've said this on the show. It's fair, but for me, I have said this before, so I won't harp on this too long. But it was self-talk. That was where I need to be more coachable. I'm like, what am I not doing? I'm doing everything else. I'm taking the cold showers, and then I was like, oh, this is so weird to talk to yourself out loud. It's so weird, but fuck it. I mean, what's the worst case scenario? It doesn't work, and I'm back to the same place I'm at right now. That's right. The risk. The reward is it works, and sure enough, I did.
Sure enough, it's all good.
It's amazing. It's amazing how I don't do that stuff as much anymore, and sometimes I'm wondering why. Like, why am I not still talking to myself all the time when it clearly works? I find myself doing it sometimes, but I should be doing it all the time. I'm working here at home alone. I should be all the time like, all right, great day. It's gonna be awesome. I don't want to do this, but I'm gonna do it anyway because I'm tough. Like just little things like that.
Yeah.
I don't do that enough. Do you still do that, or
I'm probably just like you, not as much as I should, at least not as far as the self-talk. I do try to turn the cold water on at the end of the day. Just because half the time you wake up and you're kind of half bleary-eyed, and I tell you what, that blast of cold water wakes your butt up better than a cup of coffee,
Yeah, and it's supposed to be good for you. I mean, people are starting to do like polar plunges and stuff now.
I've read and watched YouTube videos on that stuff. Yeah, supposedly. I can't keep it on there as long as I was, but I'm not 21 years old or whatever anymore.
Yeah, that's fair. But I mean, have you done like I 2 or 3 years ago during COVID, we cut like a chunk out of the ice in the lake and we went in the lake. That was insane.
Wow. How far out did you go?
I mean, we were
out into the lake.
It was okay. Like we didn't want to be like risky, but we'd like cut out to the point where you could like stand or kind of squat-ish down to like your neck level.
Oh,
so, like,
okay.
We would be like
that wasn't very dangerous. Okay.
And we got like down to here. So worst case scenario, if you like had a heart attack or passed out or something, people could still like grab you.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty big hole, so multiple people could probably get in there to get you.
Ooh.
But it was wild, man. It was so crazy that when we came out, it was warmer because the wind chill was so low in Nebraska because it's flat. Windy.
Oh, I know.
If Nebraska's anything, it's windy.
Yeah.
And so if it says, like, for example, today I looked up the weather because my mom is like, she's like, it's blizzarding out here. It's like 2 degrees for the high in Nebraska, in Grand Island right now. But the wind chill makes it like -20. People don't consider this. And so because it was like -11 after the wind chill, you get out of the water and you're wet. You're soaking wet. And it's weird because it's warmer
than it was in the water.
Yeah, because because the water is 32 degrees or more. So it's like there's like this layer of water protecting you. It was
crazy.
so surreal to like, because it's -11 in the atmosphere and you get out soaking wet with water. I mean, if you stay out too long, it's gonna freeze and then you're gonna get cold right quick. But like for like the first 30 seconds coming out of the lake, it was warm.
Great.
It was weird, man. So weird.
Wow.
Yeah, surreal experience.
But Nebraska. Anyway, there's nothing better.
Yeah,
nothing better.
Oh man. Okay. All right. Let me keep you. Let me jump into some rapid fire questions because I know we're getting late to your hard stop, time wise. Is that all right, or do you?
Yeah. No, let's do that. Actually, I need to use the bathroom again one more time.
Oh, cool.
Then let's do the hard. Then we'll rock on.
We'll come back to some rapid fire questions. See you guys in a second.
Okay.
Go, and we're back. Okay. So now let's do some rapid fire questions. And again, just so you guys know, this is typically the part where you just kind of, it doesn't necessarily mean like short answers. It just means just whatever first comes to your mind. So we're going to go through some favorites and some stuff from the book field. So favorite states out of the 10 summers that you sold in, and why is it Nebraska?
Why is it Nebraska? Well, it's funny. I was in Nebraska last week, so I still go to Nebraska and sell. I sold so much stuff in Nebraska. Honestly, I think it's my third summer where I had my big jump from 55 to 92 was to Michigan. And here's the crazy thing. So Nebraska is beautiful in its way. Pennsylvania and upstate New York are very beautiful. I sold in Pennsylvania too. And it looks the same as upstate New York does. But Michigan's kind of the combination of those. It's beautiful. It's trees, kind of a little bit of hills. And I had my best summer, like customer wise and all that kind of stuff. I sold 9,700 my seventh summer in Iowa, which is right next to Nebraska, but I wasn't right in Nebraska. I was southwest Iowa kind of.
Iowa sucks. Okay. You said country was your favorite kind of turf? Okay.
Yeah, country, yeah.
Favorite advanced sales tape that you listen
Well,
to?
and that one comes down. See, when you're talking about being obsessed with learning to sell, I almost memorized all of them. And you were talking in one of about the Alan Clements advanced sales, and Alan Clements was there my first 2 or 3 summers. I love that guy. And I maybe it is him. I really love Dan Moore's the cycle of the sale and the buying line stuff.
The bus loose one, I think it was called. Yeah, or something like that.
Yeah, it was so good. But Alan Clements, he had the best one-liners. I remember a couple of them. He was talking about approaching. He's like, they're giving you a hard time at the door. He's like, Mrs. Jones, do you have a broom? Because he had this Mississippi accent. She'd be like, yeah. Well, if I stay more than 5 minutes, can you just promise me that you'll sweep me out the door? And that was like, the third approach.
What a charmer.
And then the other one that I remember is be like, so Mrs. Jones, do you have a kitchen table? Yeah. Why don't we sit there? You got a place we can. Anyway, for whatever reason, I remember some of that stuff out of that one. But yeah, I mean, I listened to Zizzy and Rosen. I was very excited to listen to Dave Rosen on your podcast both times because for sure all of that was great. And yeah. I mean, I loved all of them.
Alan Clements, who has if anybody listening, or you will, if you guys have contact,
pretty sure I'm friends with him on Facebook.
Gosh, we need to get him on. Also, I need to listen to that advanced sales tape. I found the people who sold in like 94 or 95 or prior always say Alan Clements was the best advanced sales talk. And I'm like, that's interesting because the most common answer we get is Bill Zizzy and Rosen for sure. Rosen, but I think it's because it kind of replaced a little bit of Clemens, and it was like the next generation of like 2000s and 2010s kids that were just listening to that all the time. But every time I get anybody whose first summer was prior to 94-5, when their tape became mainstream, they always say Alan Clements, always. And I'm like, what did this guy do?
And it wasn't anything. It was like it was the advanced sales talk that he was teaching at sales school to the student managers, It wasn't anything like crazy special or GRS or It wasn't after he'd sold a bunch of books. I mean, it was probably sometime in the 80s when he was a sales manager. It wasn't even, it was a lot of technical stuff, honestly, but it's just, we all knew him because he was like senior VP in charge of recruiting or whatever when I was a first year, and he was just the coolest dude,
Absolute animal. You know what's fascinating about advanced sales tips, and I'm sure you heard like the Trey George episode when I asked him like how he like got inspired to like do that, and he was like, "Oh no, it was off the cuff." I'm like, "What? You just happened to give us gold nuggets of recruiting for any industry in like for 3 hours, and you just riffed it? You are a freak." All right, cool.
That guy has a memory like a steel cage. Oh yeah,
dude, I need to get Trey George back on here. Actually, we need a second Trey George episode. It was short.
Yeah,
it was 2.5 hours, but it was short. Okay, favorite HQ.
Favorite HQ. Probably that third summer again. Jake and Darrell and me, we had power headquarters. We'd have people following us almost every Monday. We'd bring 2 or 3 of them at a time. That's kind of why Todd would put like 3 student managers to live together, and then he could send the first years in groups of 2 or 3 to follow everybody. And that was a great one. I also remember Rhode Island, my 5th summer, Jason Kolb and I and Matt Hector. We had a good old time. Yeah.
Hard to beat the power HQs though. Okay, favorite breakfast spot, and let me Google it to see if it's still there. Where was this?
So I was looking up. I looked these up because the one in Winterset, Iowa, is not there. I looked it up on the thing. It's like permanently closed, but it was in the movie The Bridges of Madison County, and so we lived in an apartment that was on top of the restaurant. And it was like you looked out the apartment window at the courthouse kind of across the square kind of thing in one of the small towns in middle America. But then I was looking I have one of the things I had a photo album here, and it had a picture of the breakfast spot in Rhode Island. And shoot, I'd have to go back in there and look to remember what the name of it was. But it was like it had a sign that said like 166 miles back to New York City and 89 miles up to Boston from where we were in Wakefield, Rhode Island. And
wow.
What I can remember is there was a bar that we would go to like on Sunday night before just have our one beer of the week or whatever. And I'm pretty sure that is still there in Wakefield, Rhode Island. But
isn't it funny to see the things that change? Have you? Okay.
Oh yeah.
This might be a rapid fire question, or maybe this is just a regular episode question I should ask more often. But have you ever gone back to any of your turf?
Yeah.
Since you've left?
Well, I don't know about since I've left, but I remember. Because I ended up field managing in upstate New York because Cornell's up there and Wheaton College is another kind of Wheaton kind of college up there. And I remember kind of driving by the Jamestown and Olean and whatnot. But I also live, like if you go back to Nebraska, Highway 6 comes out of Omaha, and I sold on Highway 6 in Pennsylvania twice. I sold on that Highway 6 goes to Rhode Island.
Yeah.
That Highway 6 was in Missouri. I sold. My 8th or 9th summer. Was that my 9th summer? And I sold on Highway 6 over and over and over and over and over again. So in Pennsylvania twice, 2 different places, and then all the way up to Rhode Island and Missouri, and in Nebraska and in Iowa. Sold off of Highway 6 right outside of Des Moines.
I think I've told this story once on the podcast. It's so weird because I get nervous about telling stories now because people who are regular listeners are like, yes, we know, we've heard this story 7 million times because you've told it. But I guess if this is people's first episode, they've never heard it, so it's kind of hard to balance. But there was one time when I think it was my 3rd summer or my 4th summer, we went to a Sunday meeting, and then we had to drive back towards our main HQ. But for some reason, the route put us through my old turf, like the town I sold in.
Oh,
and
nice.
I was having, it was like week 3 or 4. And I was trying to connect with these kids because they were motivated, but they weren't like really understanding the impact that you could have on a family, which this is something we don't often talk about because it gets too like lovey-dovey towards Southwestern. But there is something to be said about like the fact that you can, like, there are families who are excited to see you because it is important to them that you come by, and they
Right.
end up using the product, and the kids, like, it
Yeah.
works for them. And so anyway, so you connect with these families, you build like this like friendship, and then you never see them again, and it's kind of weird. So
Right.
we were driving through, and I'm like, this is how important it is what you're doing. Let me show you. And we pulled up to a house that I knew I had sold in, and I knocked on the door, and I had the first years with me, and this lady opens, and she's like, "It's you." And I go, "Hey, Michelle." And I remembered her name. She was like one of those, those families. Every summer you had at least one
Yeah.
or two, sometimes 10, but you had like those families you just like were
Just
you
loved them.
bonded. It was solid. And she's like, "Andres." And I go, "Yeah, how's it going?" She goes, "Great. Let me see, Timmy or whatever, the kid." And she's like, "Oh yeah, he's in high school now, and he's been using your books. I mean, what are you doing here?" And I was like, "Oh, we're selling up in, New Hampshire, but we just were driving through and wanted to say hi. And these guys it's their first year, so I just wanted to introduce them to you." And they're like, "Oh my," and starts selling, like, "Oh my gosh, your company's so great. Like, what you guys are doing is so important. My kids use these books all the time." And the first year's faces are like, "Holy shit," because this is like 2 years since I've been there, and
Yeah.
it was so cool to like have that, like, "Hey, we know each other," like it was cool. Anyway, that's the random story
I
there
guess
for you.
I guess the one thing is it's been so many years since I've been to these territories and whatnot, but I do remember driving by, also off of I-72, where I point at houses that bought from me, and my wife would be like, "Yeah, you showed me that once before. Yeah, you showed me that once before." Like, they bought from me. They probably don't live there anymore or whatever. But and then
Did,
it was funny because Jake had some kids selling in Michigan where we had that Power HQ in the summer of 1995. And
so
I thought that
so
was hilarious.
wild, man. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's pretty remarkable how that stuff works, man.
Yep,
Um,
for sure.
what was your favorite follow day? Whether someone followed you or you followed them?
Well, the
You
Roger
mentioned
site was
Rogers.
obviously
I was gonna say
that
you
was
mentioned
pretty
Rogers.
memorable. The other one I think about, well, there's a couple of like highlight ones. Like my my best customer day, I had Colin Sheehan, who was like Pat Roach's best friend, came up in Michigan, and I signed up 16 out of 19 that day.
Oh
And
God.
my my positive phrase that whole day, I don't know if it was him or I just remember it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It was like time was flying by, one of those kind of days. And it was like, it still feels like morning. And we just kept on saying that all the way till like 10 o'clock at night. It still feels like morning. Still feels like morning.
The
But
day is
that was a
young.
good one. And then
Oh,
I remember the day I had 28 sit downs in a day, and this guy Clint Heron was with me the whole day. And yeah, I had like, I don't know, probably 15 of them were like 5 to 10 minutes because they weren't prospects kind of
right.
thing. It wasn't like a great sales day,
Getting it
but
out, which is a lesson in
every
of itself, but
oh yeah,
that's a whole different conversation. But yeah.
but that kid Clint Heron had just like boggled his mind, and like literally just every single door we knocked on, I walked on in kind of thing. So
Your approach must have been, I mean, obviously you guys
oh,
are crushing it, but your
I'm
approach,
still the best approacher probably in the history of the United States. So
that makes sense.
that's
You
a,
don't get 28 sit downs.
that's another positive phrase for myself.
That's it. I'm the best approacher in the United States. I love that. Okay. Favorite off schedule story, if you have one.
um,
How many
I did
beers
not
did you
get off
drink?
schedule until I knew I was done with Southwestern, and I was
You
out on
sold
the
10
Brookfield.
summers and you were on schedule the whole fucking time?
Yeah, yeah,
120 weeks of straight. God, Will, you needed to live a little. Come on, man.
yeah. That was my other thing, was I was the hardest worker. I was the guy that outworked everybody. It's the only reason I sold more than a lot of people, because I outworked them all. But yeah, I ended up I actually, that was the other thing. My sister was gonna get married my last summer, and my mom was like, "You got to come out to Colorado and come to the wedding." So I had booked a plane ticket. And then my sister called me like the week before, and they had called off the wedding and whatever, drama. But my mom was like, "You're still coming out here because your sister needs you." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm coming out there." And I remember sitting up, she ended up like house sitting at this doctor's house down in Sedalia, like south of Highlands Ranch. And I remember sitting, and it was like 75 degrees. So it wasn't hot, even though in Alabama where I was, it was 120 or whatever it was. And looking at the lights, and I was just I knew I was done. And when I got back, I didn't do so well. But, I think I was only on the book field for 6 or maybe 8 weeks. But like I remember the last day I went and I did 30 demos my last Saturday, but I got them done because I was in a hurry and I was just done. I got 30 demos by like 2:00 in the afternoon. I remember selling like 3 or 4 of them, and I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And then I was out of there.
Let's go get a beer. Let's go to the beach.
Yeah, exactly. Tell City, Alabama. Yeah, right by Talladega. Not the beach, unfortunately, but anyway.
Oh man. All right. So next one, let's see. Favorite. Oh, we did that one. Okay. Favorite sales day. Now, this could be, your best sales day from units standpoint, but like just your favorite, like, because sometimes like my favorite sales day and my best sales day, I don't think are the same thing. But so I guess whatever it means to you when I say your favorite sales day.
That's a good question. I don't know. My best one was like my 7th summer. It finally all clicked because I had always tried to sell lots of customers and hadn't like had the biggest package size. But after going and following Chat Ricky, he sold 31 units. It was like we had 5 handbooks and 2 medical books, and he would sell that to everybody. So it was 31, 31, 31, 31. And I got into the habit of doing that. And, it was like 380 units or something like that. It wasn't like 600 like Kaya Grady or anything, but it was good. And I remember I had a first year. No, I think she was a 2nd or 3rd year, Dorothy Weaver. And she was like one of those ones that would just ask like a million questions. And I remember I told her, "Oh, you're going to have to write your questions down and ask me at the end of the day, because there's just no way." Cause she would ask, and then she always talked really slow. And I'm like, I'm not going to have time to answer all your questions while we're going. You're going to have to write them down. And we jammed. Yeah. We probably had 12 customers, and it was awesome.
Wow. 380 is bananas, man. All right. This is a new one that we started asking literally like last week, because I forgot to ask this, and I think this is fascinating. But what was the biggest family that you met, as in like most kids?
See, I don't even know if I remember that.
If you don't,
I can tell you from Family Heritage. I remember in Family Heritage, there was a company or a family out in the country that had 9 kids.
That's
in Eastern Colorado. Good Catholic family.
Yeah, we had like my biggest one, I think it was like 16. I can't remember now, 16 or 17.
Wow.
21-year-old and a 0, like new.
A baby.
They had adopted.
Wow.
One. All of them were natural except the last one was adopted. Because the dad got fixed, so they're like, let's get another one. You're like, Jesus, these aren't puppies, dude.
Yeah.
How does dinner look like at your house? This is crazy.
Crazy.
Cooking breakfast for 21 people. You crazy? Outrageous. All right. And then the last one is if you met someone famous, who was the most famous person you met?
Well, I didn't meet anybody like super, super famous. I remember I sold to Mario Lemieux's niece, but that wasn't that big a deal. But I have someone who, if you're from Nebraska, this might be somewhat famous. And for probably my first 6 or 7 summers, it was my biggest customer, was in Ashland, Nebraska. And Ashland is halfway from Lincoln to Omaha, just right off the high. No. So about a half mile north of the edge of town, there was 2 big houses. And I remember asking somebody, like, do either of those guys have kids? And they're like, no, the one on the right has kids. The other one doesn't. So I pull out there, and the one on the right, nobody's home. The one on the left, I look at it, and there's a minivan, and it says Naperville, Illinois on the, on the license tag where they bought the car.
Suburb of Chicago. We love Naperville.
Like Naperville is the next town south of Wheaton. It's like,
yeah.
I'm like going, huh. So I knock on the door, and that mom comes out who lives in Naperville, and she sits down. I start to tell her what's going on. She's like, and I don't live here. This is where my mom lives. And I'm like, oh, okay. So this is the one that doesn't have kids. Okay, cool. And she's like, but you know what? I have two sisters. They both live in the area. Maybe my mom might want to buy some of these for the kids, for the grandkids.
Done.
And I come back and I meet her. Her name is Lucille Sapp. And her husband founded a truck stop group called the Sapp Brothers Truck Stops.
Yeah.
And they're all over Nebraska. And so I sold 81 units, 3 sets of handbooks to Lucille Sapp like 2 or 3 days later when I came back and met Lucille. And I was in a Sapp Brothers track stop up in Sidney, Nebraska the other day, and they sell like fried chicken and stuff under the lights in the gas station, the truck stops now. And it was like Lucille's fried chicken. And I was like, that's Lucille. She was a little bit up there. She's probably not with us anymore. That was 1994. But
yeah.
But if you've heard of Sapp Brothers Truck Stops, I sold books to the founders of Sapp Brothers Truck Stops. Yeah.
And I've been to Ashland. I have a buddy from Ashland. Great
territory. You know where Ashland.
Exactly.
Was I got in trouble with the kindergarten teachers because I used their names too much. I'll put it that way. Because they both bought books for me.
The Air and Space Museum is in Ashland, I think.
Oh, yeah, it's close by there, yeah.
They have a big old plane that just hangs out in the front. It's pretty sick as you're driving through. Damn. Cool, man. Well, that concludes the rapid fire questions. So that brings us to the ponytail section of the episode where we have our guests share their favorites or one or two, three, however many you feel like telling stories. Typically, this tend to be like the ones that are the most impactful or the most memorable to give you guys an idea of the range of what might come next. Lee McCroskey told us about the time he shit his pants in the middle of the book field. We also had someone tell us about the kid that murdered his parents before delivery school and everything in between. So, on that note, no pressure. Will Arthur, these are your ponytails.
Oh, my goodness. I'm like sitting here. Well, I guess I was thinking I told some of my ponytails already, but one of my favorite things, and I even did a whole like advanced sales talk a couple different times on this. So when I went and followed that guy, Josh Hutchin, he was like the king of playing games on the book field. And what I mean by that is he had a list and we had to check off the whole list to make it be a good day. And the things on the list were things like the 6-pin approach. And he would put 6 pins into his hat and onto his shirt. And then he'd be like doing pre-approach. He'd be like, this pin ran out of ink. Can I borrow a pen? And some of them would look at him and go, well, you got one. Or like, oh, I forgot about that part. And then you do the shoe off approach. So so he writes shoes on his list. And you go to the door, you find the one that's got a decent porch, and you take off your shoes. So at the end of your approach is like, I've got my shoes off. I'm ready to come in. You got a place we can sit down. And that's the approach. And then my personal fan, he had like 10 or 15 of these. Yeah, I mean, just all kinds of stuff. But he did the lie down approach. And so I remember coming back to my territory in Pennsylvania and being like scared to death to do the lie down approach. And I found a house out in the country. So it wasn't like a big porch or anything. It was just kind of like the back door. And I go and I lay down and the dude comes out and he lays down next to me. And I'm like, I'm just the one laying down on the job out here. How you doing? And he comes down and he lays down next to me. He's like, I like that idea. Lying down on the job. That's funny.
Oh my God. Yes. I love these funny approaches. Like, oh,
but
so
the other one was the V smile. Have you heard of the V smile? It's your vertical smile where you have to turn around and show them your butt. And then we do the V smile approach. So you kind of turn around and so they come to the door and the first thing they see is your butt because you're over like tying your shoe.
Epic.
And and then he would make farting noises with his mouth the whole damn day long. And I remember Jason Kolb went to a wedding and he came back and he's following me for like 2 or 3 hours in the morning to get himself back on track before he goes back out. He's like 10 feet behind me. And I go, we did the V smile. There was a V smile approach and then you had to do the V smile. So after my 4th or 5th summer, I would never put the bag by the door. I would always put it like behind me. So that meant I would to do a door demo. I had to turn around, stick my butt in the air, grab the book as quick as I could, and then So let me just show you my V-smile real quick, and then I'll show you how it works real quick, and then I'll get out of your hair. And so I turn, and Jason does the farting noise while my butt's in the air. And he's over there. We both almost fell down laughing, and this lady's just like mad and like, what are you guys doing here? Go away, that kind of thing. And
so
anyway,
funny, man. Oh,
we had a lot of fun on the book field. Let me put it that way.
That's so good. People forget that. Oh, it's so fun, man. One of the best advanced sales I heard was Mark Rouse talk about how he had fun in the book field. He had some funny ones too, man. He'd be like,
sure.
when he would see like the fake deer that people would have on their front door sometimes. He's like, I love those. You knock on the door. Even if they didn't have kids, you just knock and people come in there and be like, hey, deer. Honey, that's not real. Oh, okay. Hey.
Okay, good.
Mark. Oh, that's so good, man. Woo.
Awesome.
I love me some good ponytails about how to have fun in this book field. That's a great way.
For sure.
That's a good way to wrap this one up, man. Oh, man. Will
Awesome.
Arthur, this has been a blast, dude. Man, we
My
went on
pleasure.
some different. This has been a different episode. We got some pauses in there, tech difficulties, but we figured it out. This is the episode that is about more related to the book field, right? This is the one where it's like, wait, we're book guys. We found a way. We figured it out. And then on top of all of that, we had a fun way to talk about new and more in-depth stuff. I hadn't realized some of the things that you helped me realize a lot of things. That was awesome. I feel like that was more for me than this was for you. I'm so sorry.
Well, it's one of those things I've thought a lot, especially over the last 20 years since I stopped selling. Just you contemplate thoughts and things you learned and things and places you grew and what the real deal was, and it's all good.
So fun, man. Well,
it is all good.
We had a Jake, Todd, and Pat episode, but we might have to have like a Jason, Pat, and Will. Maybe we have all y'all on here. We just shoot the shit for a couple of hours for no reason. That'd be just fun.
You want Todd in there too.
Oh yeah, we need to have Todd. Todd is like such a different character. Like we need.
He was our godfather too. It's kind of like we had Soder, but Todd was like he was all of our big brother.
Yeah. I get it
for sure.
Craig was Vito Corleone, but Todd was Michael Corleone.
Michael. Yes, there you go.
That's a reference.
There you go. There you go.
If you didn't get this reference, read a book or watch a movie. Honestly, guys, what are you doing? All right, man. On that note, we'll wrap this one up here. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening. One more time, a shout out for Enlight Energy for helping us out with this episode. Solar company that's kicking some ass. Reach out to us for more information if you're looking for a new place to work. Thank you so much, Will Arthur, for being here, man. Man, this is a blast. I'm glad that you're a fan. And by the way, I just wanted to say this publicly. It means a lot that you listen to these episodes. Oftentimes I'm doing this podcast, and I'm like, we're kicking ass. We're doing great. We're making the community. We're building a network of alumni. We're bringing them all together. This is so fun. And then other times I'm like, is anybody even listening? Does anybody care? So when we have someone like you who's like, oh, yeah, I've heard this. This is like your thing. It means a lot. It really does. So thank you so much for doing that. And you would think that doesn't mean a lot to us, but that support is vital. And it's bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for listening. So
awesome.
This has been the Ponytails Podcast. My name is Anders Gamboa. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. We'll catch you on the next episode. Bye-bye, everyone.